Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, May 11th. We are continuing our full council sessions and our budget deliberations for the FY23 operating budget. We have several items on the agenda this morning. We begin with the consent calendar, reviewing a number of important decisions that have been made in committee, but collectively there doesn't seem to be a lot of pushback or questions. So they have been consolidated with staff's recommendation within the consent calendar, and they include items 1 through 38. Can I get a motion to accept the budget consent calendar as presented? Moved by Councilmember Rice, seconded by Councilmember Hucker. Are there any comments or questions regarding any of the items on the consent calendar? Hearing none, all those in favor of the budget consent calendar, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous among all those present. We now move on to our work sessions, and we begin with item number 39, which is the Department of Transportation Mass Transit Fund and FY23 transportation fees, charges, and fares. I'll turn it over to the chair of our Transportation and Environment Committee, Councilmember Hucker, to lay the groundwork for this one.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Orlin and everyone from DOT and OMB that are here. Thank you for joining us. On April 25th, the T&E Committee took up the DOT Mass Transit Fund and the Transportation Fees, Charges, and Fares item. During the committee work session on the Mass Transit Fund, the committee unanimously supported enhancements to the Transportation Services Improvement Fund, and Councilmember Glass and I proposed for the ride-on system to remain fare-free through FY23. Ride-on, as everyone remembers, I think, has been free since the beginning of the pandemic, and we believe we should continue to provide the service at no cost for our residents who need it the most. We realize it's a significant expense, but felt that it was consistent with our climate goals and our racial equity and social justice goals, particularly in light of the ridership study that showed the average income of our riders is around $35,000 a year. So that's a big item. We recommended putting it on the reconciliation list in 12 tranches and seeing how far we could get. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Orlin to walk us through the packet.
Thank you very much and good morning. One thing I want to point out at the very beginning, there was a late recommendation from the executive, which I overlooked. I apologize for. It was an inflation adjustment for the Tobytown bus service. It was totaled $29,000 and $29,071. And so the committee did not see that, so there's no committee recommendation on that, but I just want to point that out so that it's something the council will consider as part of this executive's recommendation. Other than that, the Mass Transit Fund budget is recommended to be approved, increased by about 12% over FY22. There were three sort of large issues and a couple smaller ones that were raised in the committee. One had to do with the pace at which pre-COVID ride-on service is being brought back. DOT's, I think, just completed a pick this May, which is now got to the point where 90% of the pre-COVID services on the street. And the budget the executive sent over has three more picks in FY23, one in July, which would bring it up to 94%, and one in September that would bring it up to 97%, and one in January that would bring it up to 100% of what the pre-COVID service was. DOT estimates that through the course of FY23, ridership, which is slowly coming back, will be about 88% of what it was pre-COVID. So it lags behind the percentage of the service. I had recommended that the committee and the council not approve the money for the third pick, the one in January, the one that goes from 97% to 100%, and in order to basically create more revenue for you to be able to use the reconciliation list or other purposes. That's $2.1 million. And you could always come back in January and look at what the fiscal situation is and decide whether or not you want to add that third pick within FY23 or not. However, as Mr. Hucker alluded to, I believe, well, he didn't allude to this part of it, but the committee did vote unanimously not to do that, to go with 100% service by January. That's the first issue. The second issue had to do with the Transportation Services Improvements Fund. The committee spent a lot of time this last year looking at that fund and trying to figure out ways of prioritizing getting more wheelchair accessible vehicles on the street, as well as keeping them on the street longer. They appreciate the executive's set of recommendations. There were 9 different recommendations to how to spend down that fund, but they wanted to put more emphasis on getting more wheelchairs on the wheelchair accessible vehicles on the street and keep them there longer. So there's a proposal that Mr. Reamer put forward that the committee unanimously agreed to, which would, and I could just go through this really quickly, would increase the, basically the, if I can find it here, the per mile payment, sorry, give me, I turned to the wrong page. Okay, would increase the per mile payment for wheelchair accessible taxi cabs from 10 cents to 40 cents per mile. The executive recommended 25 cents. To increase the per trip payment from $15 in the daytime to $20 for $25 for all trips, both during the day and at night. The executive recommended $20. And to increase the amount of money for the purchase of the retrofit of a WAVE vehicle from not from $15,000 to $30,000, but actually $15,000 to $45,000. So $45,000 would be available to an individual or an operator who wants to try to invest in a WAVE vehicle. He would also recommended that using $350,000 that's how that money would be used. And there's other elements of the executive program that the committee felt was not losing my voice this morning, a bad sign. Was not really as appropriate for the TSIF as it would be for the general fund. So one of which is the expansion of call and ride eligibility from age 65 to age 63. And also to increase the income level at which this is appropriate from $39,000 to $44,100. They felt that was a good idea, but it should go on the reconciliation list. So that's the recommendation there. They also agreed that the Recreation Department should get money for being able to buy a new wheelchair accessible vehicle for its senior programs. That would also be electric. That's $350,000. And that's something that was added to the Rec Department's reconciliation list. And that was approved also by the Fed Committee. And then finally, there was a program where the executive had recommended spending $800,000 of this money for capital grants to nonprofits to provide wheelchair accessible vehicles, and $200,000 for an operating program. The proposal there from Mr. Reamer and the committee was to keep it at $800,000 as a total, and to split that amount between capital and operating on a 4-to-1 ratio. So that's the committee's recommendation on that. I don't know if Mr. Reamer, you want to?
Councilman Reamer.
Thank you so much. Really want to thank Chair Hucker and Councilmember Glass. I think the committee worked through a really challenging topic here, and I think we came to a really terrific recommendation. It was not, yes, I want to say, Glenn, there's a water for you. Thank you, Ms. Roop. It was not necessarily, a recommendation. There's no easy path here, but what we're trying to do is treat a underlying problem and not the symptom of the problem. And our goal with this fund is to create a larger fleet of wheelchair accessible vehicles. And that was really why we levered the fee on the transportation network companies, the Uber and Lyft and those services. They pay a small fee. And the reason we did that was we were worried that in an era of on-demand transportation provided by those kinds of companies, that there would no longer be a fleet of vehicles for people who use wheelchairs, so that they would not be able to get rides. And so we applied the charge, and we've built up funding. We want to make sure that that funding is actually being used to get cars on the road and to put drivers in the cars. And so the committee recommendation took a different approach with the fund. I think the fund could be used to subsidize county government and nonprofit services, but again, I think our thought was that is more of a operating budget requirement, and we ought to fund that through other transportation funds, and we ought to devote this fund to getting a fleet on the road. We continue to hear from our drivers that they're having trouble with recruitment and retention, and we want to make it more economical to drive a wheelchair accessible vehicle. And so a number of these recommendations are geared towards that as well. And we have, the council recently just adopted a emergency supplemental fund and extended the relief payment for the cost of gas that has risen so high. And we're all appreciative of that as well. So I know the Commission on People with Disabilities is very enthusiastic about the committee's revised recommendation, and commend it to the council. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I echo those thanks for that leadership. We've had 2 joint committee sessions on this with HHS and T&E to discuss it. It is a very important issue to our disability community, so I'm glad we were able to move that forward. Dr. Orland, you want to keep going? I do have some comments in the end, just generally, but I'll save those for the end.
On transit,
Councilmember Jawando, sorry about that. At the end. Keep going. Yeah, we'll save them for the end.
okay. On transit fares and revenue, the committee recommended extending the free fares for ride-on for all of FY23. The executive recommended bringing back fares to $1, half the pre-COVID service rate. Mr. Reamer recommended that basically the fee be brought back to $1.50, but at the same time also reimbursing WMATA, so the Metrobus riders could also go down to $1.50. So we'd be back to where it was before, where basically ride-on fares and Metrobus fares were equalized as they are for seniors ride free and kids ride free. So that was a 2-to-1 vote in committee.
Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. Well, I would like to have some discussion here, please. I feel a little bit like the kids saying the emperor wears no clothes. There is no chance that WMATA is going to make bus free. It's not going to happen. We got a briefing from WMATA about their budget. They have a $700 million operating shortfall next year. The only reason the buses are on the road or the trains are running at all is because of a $700 million federal subsidy. There's no prospect of going to fully free fares on WMATA. So I think we have to sort of stop and get our heads around that reality, that WMATA is not going to create free fares at all. They are working on a program for lower fares for low-income riders, and we think that's a terrific idea, and we want to see that happen, and we want to, I think we should match that as that comes online. But we are in a situation today where we're providing bus service through Ride-On that's free, while some of our most heavily used routes in the county with low-income workforce riders who are on very high ridership routes, like the Q in between Silver Spring and Rockville, or the J in between Bethesda and Silver Spring. You know, those fares are $2 fares, and it's free to ride on a ride-on. It just doesn't make sense. It really, I appeal to you. It does not make sense for us to have one policy for one group of riders and a different policy for another group of riders. You know, it's if there is an equity issue here seeking to help disadvantaged members of our community with lower fares, we ought to apply that equally regardless of where you live. And that is not what we're doing. What we're doing here is the committee recommendation is making ride-on free. It sounds great, but making ride-on free while retaining a $2 fare for Metro bus. And all of our biggest corridors, New Hampshire Avenue, Veers Mill, East-West Highway, those are WMATA service routes. So what I had proposed was that we equalize them. We reduce the fare and equalize them at $1.50. So we pay WMATA in order to get fares to $1.50, we hold ride-on fares at $1.50, and we were informed that doing it in increments of a quarter, 25 cents, is very helpful, and that would be the most equitable approach. That actually produces a net savings relative to the county executive's recommendation of $1 million. I still think that's the best approach. If others would like to fully make WMATA free, I think that's about a $7 million price tag. It's quite expensive, and it doesn't seem very likely. So I just I want to appeal, and we can have some discussion. And if there's additional support, consider this carefully, because I just don't know how we leave those riders out in the cold, on these routes. They deserve our support as well.
Could I interrupt just for a second?
Please.
One thing you said, Mr. Rimmer, the cost, if Ride-On were free and made Metrobus free, that would actually cost $15.4 million.
$15.4 million.
Yeah, if on page 6, you'll see 10 different fare option combinations.
Okay, so
Just
$15 million to make both services free all the time,
Right.
annually. We don't really have a prospect for having that kind of funding. So in light of that, I think the question is to get an alternative approach would be to get WMATA to $1. And I believe that's $7 million to take WMATA to $1 and keep Ride-On at $1. But even $7 million is likely beyond our reach. So I would just appeal to us to support riders in the county wherever they live, recognizing that there's no prospect for WMATA to change its fare policy. And so we ought to approach this a little differently. Thank you.
Thank you. I have comments on this. I'm going to wait and yield to my colleagues to make their comments first. I've got Council Vice President Glass. Why don't we'll go in the queue. Council Vice President Glass, followed by Councilmember Rice, then Councilmember Friedson, and then Councilmember Hucker, and then Councilmember Katz. Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me start this conversation by congratulating and welcoming Mr. Randy Clark, who the WMATA Board of Directors just selected to be the new general manager. And Mr. Clark comes from Texas and certainly has his work cut out for him. Ridership levels that are not where they used to be pre-pandemic, and we are all having the conversation about how to make our ridership and our fares and our structure more fair and equitable, and make it more safe and reliable as well. It is hard to achieve all of those things, but I think the entire DC region and everyone who's of interest puts our hope and faith in Mr. Clark that he'll be able to work all this out. As it relates to our own proprietary bus system, the Ride-On system, the reason I have strongly been supporting free fares for everybody is because we know who our ridership is. And the average bus rider has a household income of less than $35,000. And the average household income in Montgomery County is $108,000. And so while this council, this county, our social service providers, everybody tries to figure out ways to help those who most need it, I think the location to provide that help is staring us in the face, and it is at the bus stop. So let's meet people where they're at. And that is why reducing the $2 to $0 during the pandemic has been incredibly important, not only for riders, but also for the bus operators to keep them healthy, safe. But as we move forward, I think this is the future of equity. And I appreciate the county executive reducing the $2 fare to $1. Gets us halfway to our goal. And now we're having this conversation about how much further we should go, how much further we can go. And I think we need to make this commitment to make it free. The conversation about equity with regard to the regional transportation system, WMATA, I hear you, Councilmember Reamer. I do. But all we have to do is look across the river and see what Alexandria has done. Alexandria has WMATA buses that run through their city, but they have chosen to make their own bus system free. And as we had the conversation during council, during the committee session, we were informed that the District of Columbia is undergoing its own study to figure out how to make WMATA free for district residents. Not to mention pending legislation that is before that body, that council, to provide a $100 monthly subsidy for any transit system that individuals want to ride. So our neighboring jurisdictions are all being very creative with the transit systems that run through their jurisdictions. That's what this conversation is. And to say that we can't do everything, so we shouldn't do what we can, I think is a false choice. We have our own proprietary system, and I think that we should move forward to try and make that free and have that be the level set. And last thing I'll note is that we have this conversation quite frequently about what is WMATA, what is WMATA's role and what is our role. Well, quite frankly, we can't wait for WMATA. That's why we've decided to fund additional entrances at metro sites, because WMATA is not doing it, so we have stepped up to do it as a county. And that is just one example of us going above and beyond what WMATA is able to do, what they're capable of doing, and taking it into our own hands. And I think having free fare for our own proprietary system is what we can do and what we should do. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President Glass. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. I failed to mention at the beginning, Councilmember Navarro will not be joining us today, either virtual or in person. And I appreciate the Council Vice President noting and welcoming Mr. Clark. These are our first public comments with regards to the introduction of Mr. Clark. And of course, we do want to thank Mr. Wiedefeld, and we'll have a chance to more formally thank him before his term is up. This is one of the toughest jobs in the D.C. area, top 5, and I would include President of the United States in that top 5 because the coordination among the jurisdictions, the ridership challenges, the cost of maintenance, the cost of personnel, I mean, all of these things are extraordinarily difficult, but I was impressed in reading Mr. Clark's background and his experience in Austin. I think will serve him well here, and we do look forward to partnering with him. So I now have Councilmember Rice, followed by Councilmember Friedson, then Councilmember Hucker, and then Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. You know, it's tough when we have conversations like this because it is really important for us to remember our training when it comes to equity. Equality is offering the same fare to everyone regardless of their circumstance. Equity is understanding that certain people need additional supports, and therefore we would have a tiered structure that is in place, akin to what we've seen in the District of Columbia, in Madison, Wisconsin, in Pima County, Arizona, in Boston, Massachusetts, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so my question, Director Conklin, is do we see ourselves potentially instituting a program like this to where we, just as we do for a myriad of other county services, provide equitable resources for those who cannot afford it, akin to our free and reduced meals in our schools and other types of programs? So is that something that DOT is looking at?
That is the direction we want to go, Councilmember Rice, and I appreciate that question. We did, as you probably know, a study of fair policy across a number of different agencies to identify best practices and what programs are working. And what we learned from that is the type of program you describe would be most effective if it were implemented with a regional clearinghouse and similar qualifying criteria across the different jurisdictions. So we're hoping to learn from the District of Columbia pilot, which is truly being done in a scientific way from what we understand, with certain riders getting a full free fare, certain riders getting $1, certain riders getting no subsidy, all of them qualifying under a program like their energy assistance program is how the district is doing it. And with that type of approach, we have both consistency between different operators in the region and economies of scale for managing the administrative requirements of understanding which potential customers qualify for these programs and don't. That is the direction we want to go. What we found through the analysis was that the quantity of the benefit was about the same with the dollar fare as it was with the means-based program. But with the means-based program just done by us, the administrative costs were very high. So we would like to do that in partnership with a neighboring jurisdiction like the district after they complete their pilot. But for this year, what made sense and is reflected in the executive's recommendation was to do the more, as you described, even distribution of benefits across all riders of a dollar fare while we work out how to be more precise about providing the benefits to those who really need it versus those who don't. And just a little bit about the WMATA component. Obviously we don't control their fare policy. So anything that you would want to do, you're kind of at the whim of what they decide to set as fare policy for the region. I'm not saying they do that haphazardly, but we have limited influence on what that is. So the recommendation was to keep to our own area of control in our setting of this policy rather than to expand it to an agency that has similar goals and objectives but has different pressures in their budget and different ability to implement this program than the county might.
Well, thank you, Director Conklin. I really appreciate that comprehensive response. It's one in which I'm happy to hear that we are looking at following some of the best practices, and as we've done with a number of things that we know have really focused on racial equity and social justice, looked at this from a collaborative lens and a regionalistic approach, akin to what we did with our $15 minimum wage and others. So I'm very happy to hear that. I do know, and I'm certainly sensitive to the comments that have been made about who our riders are. I will say that it's very interesting, and Dr. Orland, I just want to thank you for meeting with me the other day. And since I'm not on T&E, it's always not easy for us to follow the bouncing ball of all the committees. So it was incredibly helpful. So thank you for that. For me, when I look at what is going on with our economy, the reality is that ridership is not going to come back to the levels it was pre-pandemic because the office market is never going to come back to the levels it was pre-pandemic. And I'm sorry for those who own office buildings, but I see it. I see the conversion of space throughout the downtown Bethesda area, namely some of the buildings that my wife had a business in. We're seeing it across the board nationwide. I was just in Houston, Texas for a conference and was talking with some folks there who are experiencing the exact same challenges. I'm sure that it's pretty much in any major metropolitan city as we've now realized that there's a different way of doing business. It's interesting, as a council member who is leaving and looking at other opportunities, it's amazing how every single opportunity says they have a preferred location or remote. It's in all the job descriptions. Just take a look at your LinkedIn. You'll see it. And it says something about what it is that we're looking at when it comes to our expectations for transportation. So I just caution us about how much we're going to be counting on this bounce back, counting on this sort of getting back to those pre-pandemic levels, whether it's WMATA or ride-on, and us making adjustments, understanding that that ridership will not be the same. The infusion of electric vehicles also makes people feel much more confident in terms of doing their part to help the environment instead of driving a gasoline-powered car or using mass transit. And so those options are becoming more readily available as well. And I know you experienced that because you're also at the same time as you're pushing for mass transit options, also pushing for us to continue to support our road infrastructure and that network that is there. That's the reason why. The balance is still the balance. And so I really think that a proposal like what Councilmember Reamer has proposed makes a lot of sense. Something that gives us the ability to try and find some middle ground, understanding that some of our people are still struggling and certainly trying to make ends meet. But at the same time, I also feel as though it's important for us when it comes to being mindful of the resources that we need to fund in all other kinds of situations. You know, we have on Health and Human Services, millions of dollars going to our nonprofits. That's on our reconciliation list as well. Those go in direct conflict with each other in terms of which ones do we support. And so with the limited amount of resources, seeing something like that that's more targeted, because we can only do an across-the-board approach at this point, makes more sense to me when it comes to standing up for racial equity and social justice. So I think that for us, those targeted approaches that we've seen with some of our committees that have the ability, we don't have it now, but we're seeking it, the ability to be more strategic in terms of how we're addressing to make sure that we can put more money in the pockets of people who need it is incredibly important. So that's what I'll be leaning towards. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you very much. This is an interesting conversation, an important conversation. First, let me start echoing the excitement about a new WMATA CEO. Excited to meet Mr. Clark. Look forward to hopefully having him before us sooner rather than later. Obviously, Metro is the central nervous system of our transit network in the region. And so goes Metro, so goes our transit system. We're supplementing and complementing what Metro provides, but we certainly need Metro to be high quality. We need it to be reliable. We need it to be accessible for our residents. And Paul Wiedefeld, I got to work with Paul Wiedefeld when he was at BWI Airport and really built BWI Airport into the strongest regional airport that there is. Did an amazing job with his leadership there, and certainly wish him well, and we'll have the opportunity to do that more. Before we get into the question of the bus fares, I did just want to quickly hone in on the Dr. Orland comments earlier about the $29,071 that weren't included in committee, and I was hoping if we need to, that we could discard of that. Do we have to make a motion for that if it wasn't taken up by committee? I mean, I don't think there'll be any disagreement here.
Yeah, it might be useful to do that, yes.
So if it's okay, just to discard, I don't want it to be forgotten and then us not to do it. So because this is an important conversation. But before we get into it, the $29,071 is recommended by the county executive for Tobytown bus service that would be funded through increased tax revenues for fiscal year 23. I wanted to move that.
Moved by Councilmember Friedson, seconded by Councilmember Reamer. No discussion. All those in favor, please raise your hands. That is unanimous among all those present.
And before you go to make sure I understand, this would be something that's not included in the reconciliation list because this was actually part of the executive's budget. Okay, thank you. So this is
correct. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for clarifying that. Not included in the rec list, just wasn't taken up, more of a clerical issue than anything else. But I didn't want to get through this meeting, you noted in the beginning, without us getting into it because we have this important discussion. Okay. Tobytown's critical bus service. This was something that the community desperately needed. I really appreciate the prior county executive starting it, the current county executive continuing it, and the last county council and this county council demonstrating their commitment to it. So I just wanted to note that it's a critically important bus service, and it speaks to equity. It speaks to transit access. It speaks to the connectivity of folks who without this service would be isolated. And it's not exclusive to this community, but it's acutely existing in this community and has for generations. And it is really at the forefront of the conversation we're having now of what does that mean? What do the historical dynamics of these questions mean? And how do they perpetuate themselves in the modern context of transportation and of transit? We need a reliable bus service. It is critical to our equity. It is critical to our environment. It's critical to our economic competitiveness. It's essential. And the pandemic has demonstrated that, but we knew that before. We know that moving forward, that we are going to need good quality bus service. And when it comes to bus service, a truly good bus service provides access to everybody who needs it and is attractive to those who don't need it, who have other choices. And that is really what the goal has to be and ought to be, that everybody is riding bus because it is both accessible for those who need it and don't have another alternative, whether it be a car or another way of getting around, and it is attractive enough, it is competitive enough that it is a viable way to get to and from work and to and from where people are going. That's what we want. That's what we need to strive towards. The challenge that we have is we have ride-on service and we have WMATA service. I don't think most residents differentiate between what kind of bus they ride. I think they rely on a bus who that hopefully arrives on time and gets them to where they're going safely. I think the challenge is making it as accessible as possible and as simple as possible. A $1 fare is simpler than a $1.50 fare, I will say. A free fare is clearer and simpler than all of them. So I fully understand the dynamics of this debate. I think it's an imperfect solution either way. Either we're charging for WMATA service, which represents a substantial number of bus trips in the network, and we're not charging for ride-on at all, or we're charging some less clean understanding. Like the dollar charge, if you look at like Circulator and other bus trips, when you made things really simple and clean and easy, people tend to use bus more often. So I'm not totally attracted to the idea of raising the fare across the board to $1.50. I do think that free bus service should be something that we strive towards. I understand why the thought process is to have it consistent across all buses, because I do think most residents don't differentiate. I think ideally we would have it the same across both, but I would support the committee recommendation at this point based on what I've heard, to provide free bus service for ride-on, and we'll have to address the WMATA issues separately. But I'll yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Hucker, followed by Councilmember Katz, then Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the discussion, and this is a topic we've talked about for years. Look, we're struggling to fund core county services in this budget, and this has been an easier budget than the last several, but we have structural challenges ahead of us that make the future uncertain. We have long-term challenges. We received an unprecedented amount of federal support and state aid this year that made this budget easier. We have temporary trends like a hot real estate market that we can't count on happening forever. We know interest rates are going up, so the recordation and transfer taxes, bump that we saw this year, we should expect to go away at some point. And we know it's very hard to keep ride-on free for even a portion of the year in this current budget that's in front of us, much less to use county funds to subsidize WMATA. That's a generous thing to do. I'm a big liberal. I want to give to take care of Metro bus riders as much as I want to take care of ride-on riders. The question is, what is our responsibility? It's a generous thing to do. It's not our core responsibility. Over and over, you all remember, we have been called on, this body has, to meet WMATA's responsibilities. We last year passed Councilmember Reamer's good legislation to forego our own county property taxes to subsidize and incentivize economic development on WMATA property. That's something WMATA should have been doing competently for years, but they haven't. So that was the impetus behind that legislation. We wish they paid for capital improvements to their stations. We have moved from our wish list into our CIP things like the Forest Glen pedestrian tunnel to bring people to their stations to make their system succeed. We wish they paid for sidewalks to allow riders to access their stations safely, but they don't. And we wish every year, Director Conklin, WMATA, we're always looking at where WMATA is going to pull back on their Metro bus service and put those corridors in our lap to serve those riders rather than meeting their own regional responsibility. To me, they have the same responsibility that we have. We should keep our eye on the prize, which is look forward to the day when WMATA becomes as committed to meeting their responsibility to their riders that this council has felt for our riders. But if we can't provide free fares for our own riders indefinitely, even probably the next 12 months, to me it makes no sense and undercuts the goal of getting WMATA to meet its responsibilities to take that under our on our responsibility onto our plate as well. I'm glad they're doing the pilot to look into the free ridership for low-income riders. I hope they complete it and offer free rides to all low-income riders in the region, and we would certainly welcome that. But there's no need to undercut that process by subsidizing Metro bus riders right now. It's the responsibility. It's very true what Councilmember Reamer said, and we all heard, that they have a serious budget challenge ahead of them. They have a serious budget challenge every year. There's nothing, this is a particularly bad one, but they always have serious budget challenges, and it's the responsibility of the two wealthy states and the wealthy District of Columbia and the wealthy federal government to take care of WMATA's funding. It's not ours. I can't perfectly predict the future, but I know all the local jurisdictions should want WMATA to provide free ridership. We know we have a new GM CEO. We have the most pro-transit president in history and a support of Congress. We should let them do their job and take care of WMATA's funding, and we should take care of our ride-on riders. That's our core responsibility. It wouldn't make sense to provide free bus service to MTA bus riders or to MARC Rail bus riders or Amtrak bus riders. I'm sure all those systems would welcome our subsidies, but we can't afford that, and they have their responsibilities, and WMATA, in my mind, is no different. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I agree with much of what has been said. I appreciate Councilman Reamer's thoughts on this, but I believe since the county controls the ride-on service, that the county should provide free ride-on service. We talk about equity. If someone gets in their vehicle, they use a road that was already paid for by tax dollars and do not pay for using that road that day. And we can get into the toll road concept as well. I'm not in favor of that either, but I understand that there's an additional expense to government to buy the bus and the fuel, et cetera. But there is a savings to us as well. And it goes without saying that the riders who are using the bus for whatever reason are doing it for the right thing, are doing the right thing for the environment, et cetera. And we have and are helping, which has been pointed out several times, Metro. We've allowed them to charge top dollar for their land, and that we would take the hit for the other expenses, and work with the developers there. And Metro gains from that because they too would get additional ridership from anyone who is living or working in those buildings. Bottom line, I'm in support of free ride-on bus service. I think we do need to talk to our regional partners and talk about WMATA. And I think we also have to be careful how we talk about when we use the term for WMATA. I've had conversations with people and say, WMATA, this was WMATA land. And they said, what is it? And of course, they refer to it as Metro. And once you say that, they understand it. But I think we should have our discussions with Metro and make certain that there's an equitable service across the region. But right now, since we control ride-on, I believe we should do what the committee suggested. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. Director Conklin, just a question. The routes that are listed that are Metro bus routes, talk about I used to take the C8 all the time. Talk about the overlap, if any, with ride-on routes and Metro bus routes, particularly these.
I'm happy to do that. There is overlap between ride-on service and Metro bus service. It's clearly not a perfect overlap. In many cases, we have routes that travel a portion of a corridor that's served by Metro bus and then head to a different destination. Many of them are more integrated into the neighborhoods and terminate at the Metro bus station, so they don't precisely follow the linear corridors that WMATA operates. For example, on Veers Mill Road, there's a ride-on route that serves about a third of that route of Veers Mill Road, but the entire corridor is served by Metro bus. So
right.
You can make trips. It may be more difficult to make trips using solely ride-on. You may, for example, end up at Twinbrook and then take our 46 service to get to Rockville, rather than riding on the Metro bus route for the whole route. In general, the Metro bus system carries about a third of the bus passengers, and the ride-on system carries about two-thirds
Okay.
in Montgomery County. So you can make trips in one or the other, but it may not be the most
It
efficient.
might not be the
trip
most
you could
efficient depending on.
Correct.
But point being, there is overlap. There is a way to, if we make ride-on fully free, continue that practice. There are many rides that the residents that we want to be able to take these free rides could make trips in other places. Other places it might be less convenient, depending on where they're going. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment in
Yeah.
some cases. On US 29, it would be more convenient, but you may have to walk longer at either end of your
Right.
bus ride. The corridor that probably has the least overlap is New Hampshire Avenue,
Yeah.
where it's principally WMATA service. And a portion of that would be very difficult to manage because that corridor weaves in and out of other jurisdictions. So figuring out who to charge and who not to charge would be a challenge on that
difficult.
corridor.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you lead into my next point. I think, look, we're the Montgomery County Council. It says it right there. We are in charge of what happens in Montgomery County, and elected by the voters to do so. That does not mean we don't have regional responsibilities. And I think the way we fulfill that role is by taking care and serving as a model for our 1.1 million plus residents and doing the right thing. And we do that in a lot of ways. And then advocating collectively with our regional partners, including WMATA, whom we, as has been mentioned by colleagues, subsidize in many ways, including at the state and local level, to achieve what is the goal: free service for those who need it. So I continue, many of us talked about that before we were on this council, and I'm glad we're at the point where we can actually take an opportunity to achieve it, at least for a year, or continue at least for a year. So I'm in support of the committee recommendation, but I'm also in support of working on a regional strategy together to try to get there for everybody, realizing that it's not lost on me that I took to see a lot of these bus routes that people rely on a Metro bus. I took and other people take, and we care about those folks as well, but we can control what we can control. And so I appreciate the committee for its work. I think this is an equitable solution. And the other point I'll bring up, and if you have any comment, Director Conklin, if ridership does go down, fares go down, right? Pretty basic
the
point
fare
there.
revenue obviously declines if ridership declines.
And so you've estimated potentially, by doing this, we take that out of the equation. It's just we're not getting any fares because we're saying that's the policy objective. And so it also reduces any adjustment mid-year if fares, if ridership were to go down potentially, right? Because you have to estimate basically in the budget. Talk to me about how that works briefly. It's about $20 million a year on fares on any pre-pandemic.
It had been pre-pandemic,
Right.
yes. Obviously, it's been zero.
What
for
does
2
this
years
budget
before.
estimate, even at the dollar fee? What was
9.8 million.
9.8 million, okay. So if it was less than that, we would have to come back and make an adjustment potentially in a form of a savings plan or something like that. Is that how that would work?
It would depend on, yes.
Depends on what else?
It would depend on
You could move around.
budget performance and
Right.
a whole bunch of other areas and whether there was actually a gap.
How big the gap was?
In this environment with fuel being more expensive and a lot of other things being more expensive, it's unlikely that we would have that savings
Right.
elsewhere. But in past years, we've been able to, fill the revenue gap without coming back to you for
Yeah.
supplemental.
Well, my point being, let's take that off the table. Let's do
Right.
the right policy objective. Let's make it free now. And talk about clarity. I appreciated that point. Let's tell people after that it's going to be free, and hopefully that ridership goes up and it helps our residents. So I think that's the right thing to do for a lot of reasons. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. I have a few questions, thoughts, and just this is further evidence why I love serving with all of you. I don't really disagree with anything that's been said. I think everybody's made really good points. Everybody's got the best of intentions, tackling this from multiple angles, considering fiscal responsibility. All of it comes into play as we have this important conversation. And I think in principle, there's unanimous agreement in that we all want to make ridership as accessible as possible for everyone because it is such a core infrastructure issue and leads to economic development, being able to go to the grocery store, being able to go to your doctor's appointment, all of it. So it is critical. And we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that our ride-on system is a model, period. and has been for generations. And so it's our job to ensure that we continue the legacy that has been established over those generations. So with a little bit of that as context, and then also I'll say as context, the term level set expectations was used a lot, and I do want to use that term right now. We've got a running tab of about $49 million on the reconciliation list currently. And we are not going to be able to pull all of that off of the reconciliation list. And as has been noted, this is a good year with regards to the budget. And there are key indicators that I think should be alarming. And if we begin to write checks that we can't cash later, then it will mean a mid-year savings plan. And that was the first course of action that this council took, literally the first vote we took coming on board was a mid-year savings plan. So we want to avoid that, obviously, and try to balance that with all of these very important initiatives that we know make a huge difference. But just a couple questions, Mr. Conklin. I appreciate where Councilmember Reamer's coming from in trying to find that sweet spot, but I'm just curious as to, has WMATA weighed in on that particular proposal, and what has their feedback been? It may be in the packet. I apologize. There's a lot to go through.
No, they have not. I mean, they obviously have a lot of curiosity about what your recommendations or actions are going to be, but they have not weighed in on that specific policy.
And do you have estimated or educated guess on what potential impact that would be overall? I mean, this isn't going to have the votes, clearly, but I'm just curious from a policy perspective moving forward, from your perspective as an expert in this field, how you feel about that proposal.
Sure. I too would like to see a uniform fare policy, which is what we had for a very long time. But I think that is probably not going to return to that state for a while. We've seen, as I think Councilmember, I don't remember who brought it up. It might have been Councilmember Rice brought up Alexandria's approach, where they're going in the direction that the committee has recommended, where they're free for their own service and not for Metrobus service. I think we're going to see more of the Virginia jurisdictions trying to take more of the Metrobus obligation on, because their funding arrangement is different. So we may get to a point where it's more uniform in Virginia than it is in Maryland. I tend to agree with Councilmember Hucker's view that we need to put the pressure on WMATA to do the things that we think are right for our community, for the services they operate in our community, rather than letting them off the hook. And I do think this is in some ways letting them off the hook in terms of studying these issues, figuring out solutions to these issues, because we're essentially buying them out of their problem with the county's money. So I don't think that's constructive in the long term, and I think it could lead to an environment where we see less and less interest of delivery of the type of service we would like to see without us directly paying for it, which we can choose to do that, but that obviously detracts from our ability to do the other things that we'd like to do in making the ride-on service better, or investing other areas that are supported by the Mass Transit Fund and the TDM program, or taxi subsidy, there's a whole host of programs that are in transit. So any draw that we have of county resources to do things another agency is doing obviously reduces our ability to do those things. And the other thing that I'd mention just in the overall idea of maintaining fares is one of the reasons that Ride-On is a robust system and is able to withstand some of the financial pressures that we see Metro is not able to, is because we have a diversity of revenue sources. We have significant state aid that comes every year. In the last couple of years, which is unusual, we've had significant federal aid. We've had a base of ridership-generated revenue, advertising revenue, and then local tax support. So anytime one of those revenue sources is stressed, we can have some flexibility to find room in the other revenue sources to make up that difference, and that's made the service more resilient. In the case where you start to cut some of those revenue sources out in their entirety, you just have more exposure to overall budget pressures or the pressures that are in those other revenues. In the pandemic, the state revenues were reduced. We were very fortunate. The ridership revenues disappeared. We were very fortunate the federal resources covered that gap. Without any pieces of those puzzles, it just makes it harder to maintain the quality of service and the amount of service that we want to maintain. So I get very nervous about zeros, because zeros are a very hard point to move off of in the future. If you said 50 cents, you have more flexibility to move from 50 cents to another number than 0 to another number. But overall, I think the committee direction is probably a smarter direction than Council Member Reamer's direction. I understand his direction. I'm sympathetic to that direction. But I think that brings in a host of other regional policy questions that are more complicated and puts the county in a more awkward position in the long run.
Just a couple of other foundational questions. So obviously, the cost of doing business has gone up across the board in every sector, in every industry. I would imagine it has in yours as well. Can you talk a little bit?
You've seen some of that with the driver salary actions you took
Yep.
not too long ago, yes.
Supply and demand issues, particularly with vehicles. Anybody who's trying to buy a used car right now understands how challenging that can be. And with expenses, can you talk a little bit about the projection of expenses moving forward, especially over the next several years? Is there a way to anticipate, is there cause for concern on that rate of expenditures?
I am not expecting any of our baseline costs to go down. I don't think we're going to be seeing savings in this arena in any of our operating costs, fuel, vehicle maintenance, drivers, any of those things. I think the cost pressure is up in all of those arenas. Those aren't directly reflected in this budget recommendation because these were estimates at a point in time, obviously. The only place we might have savings is if we're not able to find the operators and therefore not able to operate the service we'd like to operate. So the quantity of service is the only place that I see any possibility of us not seeing upward cost pressure. So if that informs your recommendation, I mean, we're not going to see suddenly it's cheaper in any of these factors.
Thanks. I figured that. Just wanted to get that on the record. There's a moral argument that can be made clearly on the return on investment with the fact that people making less than $35,000 a year represent the largest share of ridership. Certainly makes sense for so many different reasons to help support those families and those individuals. But is there an economic return on investment that could be made with zeroing out or bringing as close to zero, just to make the argument that we may be able to make up some of those revenues in other form or fashion? If ridership increases into our more urban areas for people to be able to come and go to restaurants, to come and go to work, is there an argument that could be made for that?
I think that the principal ways in which there's an economic argument around this are, first of all, people being able to access job training opportunities that they're not otherwise able to do by relying on the transit service. And secondly, in terms of being able to move through job opportunities, if somebody's working in a very low-wage job near them, because that's what they have available to them because of their transportation options, and by having less of a barrier with a transit fare, they can get to a higher-paying job that's further away. Clearly, that is a return to that family and is a return to the county in terms of the county's economic capacity, because that resident is earning more, can do more things. Ostensibly, they might be paying more in tax revenue. I don't know if that, at this level of income, whether that happens or not, but our residents being better off by having better, higher-paying jobs is better for the county, independent of whether that translates to a revenue offset to the transit system.
And last question for now is, clearly residents would prefer not having to pay anything at all than having to pay something. I mean, that seems pretty clear. But have there been any surveys or analysis done on beyond just the expenditure aspect of it, and also, surveys and analysis among drivers themselves? I've heard Council Vice President Glass mention, and I've heard individually, anecdotally from riders too, that there is a preference, particularly during the pandemic, to minimize the interaction that happens between the riders and the constituents that use them, so that they just literally come on and come off. I get that. But in terms of the logistics of having to incur the fee and expense, have there been any surveys or analysis that would underscore why going in this direction makes sense?
Well, the revenue collection, there's a baseline cost for that, and it's a shared expense because the revenues are managed with our parking operation as well, so it's not a standalone revenue unit. There's a minimum requirement to operate that. We have been at roughly that minimum requirement with no transit fare, so it's not a one-for-one exchange if we collect fare. So I don't think you see savings in that regard necessarily by not collecting the fare. There is some savings with the on-bus infrastructure if we don't maintain the fare box or stay current with WMATA's replacement of their fare box. That's cheaper for the county initially, but in not too long a period of time, that eliminates your ability to collect the fare because you won't be interoperable, or that equipment just will no longer function. So there's a lifespan in which we have to be fare free before we're not going to be easily able to collect fares without making a major capital investment in the fare system itself. And there's a longer term arrangement with WMATA as the regional clearinghouse for smart trip payments and smart trip management that we're going to pay independent of exactly what we collect. The formula is not just based on revenue, but on ridership and a bunch of other factors. So you don't get all of the savings there, and we would, at some point in time, decide to withdraw from that, which then, if there are regional solutions, we're not going to be part of those regional solutions, or we have to rejoin and get those agreements back in place. So being a participant in the fare system in the long run, or in the immediate time, I think is important for the long run, and our ability to have that available to us over time and to participate in whatever the regional solutions are over time. I'm not sure I exactly answered your question, but I hope I did.
No, you did. I guess it just sort of triggers, and we've talked about the regional approach. Several of my colleagues have made that point. I know we all agree on that, and with the new director coming in, it presents another opportunity for us to have somebody look at these issues with a fresh set of eyes. Council of Governments has done a great job in convening us as a region, but clearly this will have to be a priority in seeking that regional approach, and it's always a chicken and an egg. I get it, but I appreciate the comments. So, just where I am on this is I came into this reading the packet, getting briefed from staff in support of Councilor Reamer's proposal, but in hearing your comments, Director Conklin, I'll be candid, they were compelling, but I do think there's a practical reality that given the challenges on the ongoing reconciliation list, I think it's going to be very difficult to entirely zero out. And so I just want and I appreciate that it's been proposed in several tranches to look at various options, because I just don't know that we're going to be able to realistically get to zero when we're competing with all other really important initiatives like food. That are also critical as well. And we took the $20 million off the top with OPEB, which I support because I just think that sends the wrong message. The sausage is going to be made soon here on this side of the aisle with regards to the budget, but going into it, I just wanted to share those are my perspectives and thoughts.
You haven't asked this question, but I just wanted to make sure all the council members are aware. There is a 60 to 90 day lead-up period towards us implementing any new fare policy to get all the collection systems aligned with WMATA as the clearinghouse for fare in the region.
Got it. Okay. Councilmember Reamer, followed by Councilmember Katz. Oh, sir.
Gary Nalvin, OMB, just wanted to follow that up. That's currently reflected in the CE recommended budget. As of the April amendments, we had taken out 2 months of fare revenues to reflect the 60 to 90 day period. And that was budget neutral. It was offset by current revenue reductions supplanted with state aid and a mass transit project.
Thank you. That's helpful. Councilmember Reamer, followed by Councilmember Katz.
My last comment. WMATA has outlined a vision for their fare strategy that is focused on providing free fare for the lowest income riders. The proposal that I supported was consistent with that. I don't think it worked against that in any respect. I think the county should fully get behind that. So I don't agree that pursuing free fare here or pursuing a equitable fare policy here undermines that. I think WMATA has been very clear about what they envision as the future fare direction for WMATA, and I think we could help make that happen while standing up for riders on these other corridors in the county. So the committee recommendation is before us. No other motion has been made.
Right.
Just to observe that. So thanks.
Thank you, yes, and I was given a note by central staff as well on the same point. Councilmember Katz, followed by Council Vice President Glass, and then we'll vote on the committee recommendation.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. President, and I will be very brief. But as you might recall, at Public Safety, when we were discussing alcohol beverage services, I suggested that one of the things that we should consider earmarking is the revenue from alcohol beverage services, which is about $30-some million, depending on the year, to say that that would pay for free ride-on service for it now goes into the general fund. But, excuse me? It's $30 million beyond the bonds and whatnot, and it's just a suggestion. Obviously, it wasn't. It was discussed, but it wasn't something that was voted on. But I do believe that it shows that when people say, why are we in the liquor business, that could be one of the reasons we can say as well we're able to give free service for ride-on and every other thing that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President Glass.
I just want to elevate or reiterate a few things. One, throughout this conversation, appreciate the thoughtfulness and focus on who we're talking about in the riders. And it is undeniable that the best indicator of an individual's economic potential is through access to reliable transportation. And that is one of the underpinnings of this conversation, making sure that people are not deterred from educational opportunities, recreational opportunities, and job opportunities because of the cost of taking the bus. And also, when you take fares out of the bus, when you reduce the collection time, you're making those buses more efficient as well, which is something that was not said in this conversation. So for all of the routes and all of the buses that would operate with free fares, it would make those systems faster, those routes faster. And then lastly, the budgetary aspect. You were just talking about the 2-month lag. Is that taking into consideration the budgetary requirements for recalibrating the fare collection? Should it go back up to $1 or go back to anything else?
Yes. I mean, anytime we would change the fare program, we need about a 60 to 90-day processing time to get WMATA to adopt that in the algorithms for the fare collection system.
And when we were in committee, it was discussed that it would be about $1 million to recalibrate the boxes, and I just want to make sure that based on the conversation or the comments that were just said, that's been neutralized.
I'm not sure about I don't think there's a direct cost. It's probably the revenue impact.
Yeah.
I read that there was a direct cost.
I don't recall that. The council's going to be making a final decision on fares on May 19th, so the 2 months will start then. So this could go into effect in July,
Okay.
if there were a fare.
My understanding is that there was a direct cost for the recalibration, and that adding to the conversation that reducing the fares to zero would also reduce that cost.
I think the confusion was initially we heard that certainly at DOT, and Mr. Nalvin mentioned it from OMB, that the executive's recommendation assumed that the council's decision, whatever that would be, you'd start the 2 months from July 1st, and so that's why they wouldn't start until September 1st. When we explored this more with the department, with OMB, we realized, well, the council's making a decision on May 19th. The 2 months could actually go into July, and you could start, if there were a fare, you could start collecting revenue then.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Giwando.
Just briefly, I kind of alluded to this, Director Conklin, but I think in light of where we're going, it looks like we've talked about in the past the study of our routes, right, and that process and lining it up. I've urged, as have others, with places people need to go, hubs for service. We've got these great hubs now, libraries, recreation, those kind of things. I think in light of this, it also would make sense to, if you've already done this, you can speak to it, to look at the alignment. The question I was asking of, okay, if we do go fare free, how can we best, while we put pressure on WMATA and work with our regional partners to pursue that strategy, in the meantime, there will be this period of time where it will be more or less convenient to get to certain places. and how can we look at that in sight of our route alignment and where we stop? Could you speak to that? And
I can. As part of the Right on Reimagine study, we are responsible for analyzing and developing the recommendations for all of the bus services in the county, independent who operates them. And one of the concepts that we've been talking about with WMATA is how do we account for the different service providers. And the baseline assumption we're using is that there's an hours of service budget for each, for Right On and for WMATA, but the distribution and geographic location of those services doesn't have to reflect what's on the road today. And it goes hand in hand with some work we're doing with WMATA on the location of depots, because WMATA's depot in Montgomery County is inefficient for them, given where all the service is located. And it might make more sense to have a different distribution of services by Metrobus and by Ride-On than currently exists as we go through that work. And we're also talking with them as we implement bus rapid transit corridors, how do we pivot so that we maintain the quantity of service WMATA is providing to the county, even though it may not be on the same corridors or in the same configuration. So that's something else that's part of that conversation. So we're involved in that every day in the work that we're doing in the Reimagine study and in other initiatives.
and what's the timeline on that again?
That's about a 24-month effort. It kicked off this spring.
Right.
So we're 18 months or so left in that
Got it.
effort.
Okay.
And WMATA's regional route studies are just going to get started probably this fall.
So it sounds like what I'm asking will be a part of this process.
Yeah, it absolutely
Particularly in
is.
light of this
It's
action.
fundamental to the work we're going to do.
Perfect. I think that's key. I mean, we have to make sure, again, at the core of this is how do we get our residents around quickly to the jobs, to the amenities, to the things that they need to do. And so alignment of stops is a key part. So great to hear that. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks. All right, good discussion, everyone. We have a committee recommendation. All those in favor of the committee recommendation, please raise your hand. That is unanimous, except, well, not unanimous. That is Councilmember Friedson, Vice President Glass, myself, Councilmember Hucker, Councilmember Reamer, Councilmember Juando, Councilmember Katz, all those opposed. Councilmember Rice.
Okay, there are two more items on the mass transit budget. Very quickly, the committee did unanimously recommend not filling the new Travel Smart Ambassador position until January. That's a savings of $50,000. And not filling the service planning position until October, which is a saving of $29,370. And that concludes the transit budget.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is the general fund budget. And for this, the committee actually recommends approval of the entire general fund budget. There were two items that were brought up. One was the executive had recommended returning to the same pre-COVID level for resurfacing and roadway patching as before. The idea was brought before them to increase, to basically approve 2/3 of that increase and come back to the last third in January. We've seen the revenue situation and decide then whether or not you could afford the last third. But the committee unanimously agreed to go with the executive's recommendation on that. And then similarly for tree maintenance, tree planting, tree trimming, et cetera, in the operating budget, as opposed to the CIP, the executive also recommended going back to the full level of service as was pre-COVID. Council staff's recommendation was to, again, approve 2/3 of that now, come back and revisit the other third next January. The committee, by a 2-to-1 vote, agreed with the executive. Mr. Reamer agreed with council staff's position to basically approve 2/3 now and put the other 1/3 on the reconciliation list. And then the other item was Mr. Juando had recommended increasing the operating budget for the Safe Routes to School program by $116,000. And what that would do, if you do that, and then you continue that level over the next 3 years, you'll have completed all of the school walkshed assessments that we talked about last year, and it would be finish that job within 4 years rather than at the current pace, which would be 8 years. And the committee unanimously recommended adding that to the reconciliation list.
Councilmember Juando.
Thank you. I actually wanted to just speak quickly to all three items. I'll go in reverse order. Appreciate the committee's work in the DOT and Mr. Paler and Director Conklin on this multi-year effort to make sure our walk sheds and areas around our schools are safe. This is really important to keep in, I think, because if we can know, similar to our ball fields, if we know the assessment, we can prioritize with CIP funding, but we have to know which are the most dangerous areas for our kids. So I really appreciate the committee's work there. And also was very happy to see the resurfacing. That's something I know a lot of us have been hearing about. And with the winter, we actually had a winter last winter. It has made everything a little worse. And so I just wanted to provide you, maybe just briefly, Director Conklin, what will this full amount allow us to do as far as getting to some of these urgent needs on the roads?
Well, Mr. Lannon's pulling up those details, but this is an area, obviously, where we're able to get more productivity out of the paving program and address more residential and arterial roads. There were specific amounts that's achieved. So it's about 12 miles of sealing of roads that are preventing them from decaying into deeper level of repair.
And give me a sense of that. I read that in the packet, the 12 months. So what does that mean? And how many? So you'd be able to do 12 miles a year, basically.
More than what the
more than what's
base
currently
was,
being
correct.
done. Okay. And what was the base? What was last year?
I don't know if Mr. Dorsey has that information handy.
Okay, but this is like almost. I read in the packet it's like almost a 50% or 44%, I think, increase or something like that from last year. I thought that's what I
don't
read.
recall.
I think Glenn's committee packet had more greater level of detail regarding that.
It's a 44% increase in the budget from FY22.
Okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean 44% increase in it.
It depends on it depends on the type of remediation that's
Okay,
applied.
we can go
because
into
there's
this
different
later.
costs.
I just would like to follow up. I'd like to know, I know you're getting backlog. I've been asking residents who asked me to call you guys and get in the
Right,
queue.
yeah.
So I think it's something that is going to continue to be an issue.
Most of the money in the CIP, most of the money for resurfacing is in the CIP.
Right.
This, as Mr. Conklin pointed out, this is for preventive maintenance. Really, it's really keeping roads from getting to the point where you have to do a major resurfacing job.
Right. So they're related in the sense that if you can
Yeah.
stop, you get a little more life in there. Yeah, save us money in CIP. Yeah. Okay.
If you remember the old Fram
It's your
oil-
6-month checkup at the dentist.
Well, I was going to say,
Yeah.
the old Fram oil filter commercial, you can pay me now or you can pay me later.
Right.
So.
Good. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
So, Director Conklin, your office and my office have been talking about safe routes to school for almost a decade now.
Yes.
Is there any way that we can, and I support the funding that's there, accelerate this to the point of, before I leave office, having assurance that this is going to be completed? Because it seems to be the never-ending story of us trying to assess these routes that are incredibly important when it comes to the safety of some of our most vulnerable.
Well, I think this action puts it on a trajectory to be done in 4 years, which is clearly after you leave office, Councilmember Rice. But it would at least put that on a timeline which I think you can be proud of. You'd probably like it to be immediate. I know that's the case, but I think that's a reasonable timeline to implement these studies. Keep in mind, in the earlier CIP actions, the committee had added very significant funding to implement the recommendations of this program, which is just, if not more important than the study process. But getting the study process done in a shorter timeline allows better use of those CIP dollars in a longer timeline. If you wanted to do it faster, you can do it faster, but I know you have lots of other budget pressures and other priority areas.
Well, I mean, we're throwing stuff on the rec list, so please enlighten me. What are the abilities? How would we be able to accelerate?
Well, if this is a 4-year effort, then I don't know the exact calculation.
Do you have the
I don't know if I could
capacity
do
to
that.
be able to get it done is more my question, because it never was addressed to us as it was a money issue. It was addressed to us as it was a capacity issue. That's what the conversation was before. There was money, I mean, obviously, but when we talked in E&C,
Yes.
there was a conversation about capacity. I remember explicitly. So is it capacity? Is it money? Is there a possibility for us accelerating this?
I don't know how much faster we could do it than this, because there is a question of, having the right diligence in the work and quality control in the work. So, I think this is a reasonable pace to get this work done any faster, I think we'd become less efficient and would start to strain the resources that are doing those studies to the point where we might lose quality in that work. And we had the same conversation at T&E about the execution of the capital program, where yes, we can expand the amount we're doing, but we can't expand it that quickly. And with this four-year lead time, we're probably in the sweet spot where some of the larger capital funding availability is in the CIP.
Mr. Wellen?
Mr. Rice, if I can also clarify, this is actually the second cycle of Safe Route to School assessments. In the first cycle, when we launched the program, we really took it from a reactive squeaky wheel approach to a very proactive, went out and did a scoring system of all the schools, went in ranked order of what had the highest safety issues. In that assessment, we really focused on bringing the school zones up to standard, a lot of operational type of issues, the chaos that goes around with, just parking issues, drop-off issues, things of that nature. The second cycle was to look at more the traffic signals in the area, the capital infrastructure in the area. I would imagine when we get done with this cycle, we'll probably go into a third cycle and look for additional things to focus on.
Okay. All right.
So I think it is a bit of a never-ending tale.
Well, I appreciate the comments, Director Conklin, that you made in terms of we want the integrity of what it is that we're doing to be top-notch because, again, our kids are depending on it. So from that standpoint, then I don't have a recommendation about us accelerating. I would just say that this is incredibly important and has been for so long. And every single school year that goes by where we have additional students that we identify, something has happened tragically, and it's not the fault of DOT, but it certainly is one in which we all share in that burden of understanding that we owe it to our kids to try and produce routes that are going to keep them as safe as possible. And so thank you for your work. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Hucker had a follow-up point.
Well, I just didn't want to lose, I was going to say this myself, and I didn't want to lose Director Conklin's point about obviously you need to both do the assessments and you need to do the funding. And you can't have one without the other doesn't make any sense. And I don't want the council to lose sight of the fact that we in T&E and the council approved in the capital budget deliberations, and Glenn can elaborate on this, additional funding, considerable number of millions of dollars to do the sidewalk gaps and additional crosswalks and other things like that around schools. Now this assessment, countywide assessment being accelerated, will give us more targets to spend that money on, but we have put the money in the capital budget already.
Council Vice President Glass.
Sorry, Glenn, do you have?
No, I was going to follow up on your point.
You'll remember better than I will.
What the committees recommended was, actually originally Mr. Jawanda recommended adding $300,000 a year over 6 years. And then the committee upped that in years 24 through 28 by adding another $500,000 a year in those 5 years. So it's $300,000 more than the executive, who had also recommended adding money into his budget. So it's a considerable increase in the CIP. I'm going to have to hasten to add, we have yet to come to CIP reconciliation, and we're about $158 million over. So there are going to be a lot of cuts and deferrals. So we don't know where that's going to end up. But nevertheless, that's what the committee and the council has done so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Vice President Glass.
More potholes filled, more roads resurfaced, more trees planted, and more stumps removed. That's a pretty good list of what this item entails. And with regard to safe routes to schools, which we support, we increased, there is unanimous support amongst all of us, county government and the community, that we need to do more. I'm just going to re-up what I said in the joint committee, in that there are various ways to make our roads safer and various ways to build sidewalks. And it behooves us to have either another joint committee conversation or a full council conversation about having a more holistic approach to keeping not only our kids safe, but all of our residents safe on our roadways, and doing it in incremental ways with various programs and pots of funding have moved us forward, but it's not where we need to be. And if we have to rejigger the way we organize sidewalk construction and make it more holistic rather than have a piecemeal approach, I would be supportive of that. But first we have to have that conversation where we see how much money in total go toward these efforts, and we can do that at some point, maybe after the budget or a review of some of these programs later on.
Not to extend the conversation, but this is an area where there's going to be significant additional federal funding available. The Safe Routes to School, or Safe Streets for All program that has not yet been released, and there are a few other programs that we have an eye on to try to bolster our ability to achieve this objective. And you're right, it is achieved through a variety of programs, not just this one.
And as we start receiving and funding programs through the infrastructure bill, this is all going to be part of that conversation. So I appreciate the engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Orland, was there anything else with regards to the general fund before we take a vote?
Well, not on the general fund, just one more point on the leaf vacuuming fund. The executive is recommending an increase of 3.4%, which would increase the annual charge for a single-family house by $2.23, so it would actually reduce the charge to multifamily units by 11 cents. The committee recommended approval unanimously of that.
Great. All right, we have a committee recommendation before us with regards to the general fund. All those in favor of the committee recommendation, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous among all those present.
Okay, the last item for transportation today is you reviewed a large part of the CIP back in March. This reflects changes since March and also some new proposals. And I'll try to go through this relatively quickly, although it's a long packet. On page 2, the first item is Goshen Road South. The committee is recommending adding $4 million in FY 27 and 28, $2 million each of those years, to do basically preliminary engineering for a set of sidewalks and bikeways along Goshen Road from Odenhall up to Warfield Road. The White Flint Metro Station North Entrance, we've received, we're going to be receiving $4.5 million from the General Assembly, pre-authorized for FY 24 and FY 25. And the recommendation here is to use that money to complete the design, 100% of the cost of the design of that project. Currently, there's only 25% of the cost of that project included in the county funds. The hope was to try to find the rest of the money elsewhere. This provides the rest of the money for the design in FY 24 and 25. It still leaves the 25% figure for 26 through the balance of the program. And bridge renovation, the executive had recommended in April adding $3 million to this program to address any other failures that might occur, like the failure is close to happening in Germantown that you approved a supplemental on, I believe it was last week. Committee recommended approval of that. There was a cost increase to the Garrett Park Road Bridge. The committee recommended approval of that. The executive recommended adding $500,000 in FY 23 to the street tree preservation PDF. This is the one that goes through neighborhoods, block pruning trees to protect the health of the tree canopy. The committee approved that. The Bethesda Metro Station South Entrance, we received $12 million in direct aid from actually $12 million is going from the General Assembly to WMATA to help pay for the increased cost of the mezzanine at the metro level. And we're also receiving directly, the county has $2 million of federal aid. So the executive's original recommendation was to increase the budget for this project by $20 million. But now the increase would only need to be $6 million in county funds as a result of that. The committee, of course, approved that. In the bus rapid transit projects on 355 and US 29 Phase 2 and Veersmill Road, the committee, the General Assembly sent us some aid is there as well for the US 29 pedestrian bicycle improvements project. And this program does include as we saw in March, money from the opportunity lanes. The executives recommended sort of reorganizing when the money is going to come from which source, so the opportunity lanes money comes a little bit later. Otherwise, it's the same costs. And the committee's recommendation, the only thing that's really different from the committee's recommendation is that the General Assembly did authorize or pre-authorize $7 million for the bus rapid transit project, generally speaking. that had not been programmed by the executive. And so through the bullets that you see on the bottom, page 4, what this does is allow that money to be used instead of county money to do the detailed planning for the New Hampshire Avenue Transitway and the North Bethesda Transitway. Again, those monies had been funded by county funds. Now they're funded with state funds. And the last bullet there on page 4, the executive had recommended appropriating the money for doing the final design or the design of phase 2 of the US 29 project. The committee and the council in the past has said no, that appropriation should not happen until the council has the opportunity to select the preferred alternative, which will likely happen this summer. The state, the DOT is almost ready with finishing that study. On page 4 and 5 of the Great Seneca Science Corridor Transit Improvements, there's 6 lines that are proposed, have been proposed a few years ago. Basically, enhanced bus routes, almost BRT-ish like routes, serving that part of the county. 2 of them you've already funded the construction for, the pink line and the lime line. However, the money for the buses that would be operating on them had not been budgeted. The state has provided $11.3 million they authorized basically enough money to pay for most of the service in their action back last month. But there's still a shortfall, and so of the 13 buses that are needed to operate that, starting in FY25, only about 11 of them will be here, so we'll have to extend the length of time that diesel buses are used on that route just for another year, and then there'll be enough money from the federal grant, from the state grant, to be able to pay for the last buses in that next year. And with that additional state aid, there's actually a way of supplanting about another $2.5 million of county funds in the Ride-On Bus Fleet project, which is where we're going to be replacing all buses from now on with electric buses, or I should say low-emission buses. They won't necessarily all be electric. In the pedestrian facilities bikeways project section, the executive had recommended programming some of the neighborhood greenways that WABA had proposed. However, the council's action to date is actually larger than that, and so the committee is not recommending approving the executive's recommendation because it's less than what the council's already done. Under the bikeway site programs minor projects, the General Assembly did approve $2 million towards a shared use path on Norwood Road between Maryland 108 and Ashton Forest Way in the Olney Sandy Spring area. That's an additional scope, so it doesn't supplant county money, but that's money that can go towards building that project and it would be added. The Bowie Mill Road Bikeway, the council had recommended to date accelerating that project by 1 year from what's in the approved CIP. There is $1.5 million that we've received from the General Assembly in that regard. The executive had recommended a slight acceleration of the project in terms of the design, but he still had completion in FY29. So the committee's recommendation is no, not to do that, but you just use the $1.5 million to supplant county funds on the schedule that you've already approved, which would have it finished by FY28. Cherry Hill Road Bikeway bike facility, the council had put in $1,250,000 for the planning for that bikeway in White Oak as part of the WABA proposal. However, the General Assembly has allocated $4 million to this project, which would certainly pay for the design and possibly most of the cost of the construction of that facility. So the committee's recognized that and is recommending the council that it approve a Cherry Hill Road bike facility project with a $4 million, which is also the executive's recommendation, and then no longer put the additional $1.25 million of county funds into planning because it's not needed anymore. Similar thing with a Norwood Road shared use path. The General Assembly is providing $4 million there. I think Mr. Joando last year and again this year had recommended putting in money for $750,000 to do the planning for that, but this essentially replaces that. So this will actually do the planning and perhaps even all the construction, if not most of it, and there'll be a separate PDF for that. That's the executive's recommendation on that. The Oak Drive, Maryland 27 sidewalk, the General Assembly.
Before you get to sidewalks, just really quick, Dr. Orlin, Councilmember Rice had a question regarding bikeways or comment.
Thank you. Just very quickly, and so I'm curious because I know, again, just anecdotally from seeing on Middlebrook Road, our bikeway, and some of the others in the Up County, do we have any evaluative criteria that we utilize in terms of seeing what the utilization rates of our bikeways are in some of our areas?
We've done some permanent counts on some of the down county locations. I don't think we've done any evaluation work on that particular facility yet.
Okay.
It would be good to do that. I agree with you.
Yeah. I think it would be helpful because, again, we invest a lot of money in these types of resources. And so if they're not being successful at increasing usage, we need to think about ways that we can promote folks utilizing the resource, because then it just becomes something that just sits there and really isn't an advantage for the community. And it's their taxpayer dollars that are heavily invested in this. And so from that standpoint, while I know that there's so much focus always on down county when it comes to a lot of these initiatives, I really think that if we are looking at this from an equitable standpoint in terms of continuing to promote these types of resources, we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to encourage their usage. So we'll just ask that we take a look at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Joanna has a question in the end, right, or a comment? Okay.
Okay, the next was Oak Drive, Maryland 27 sidewalk. Here, again, the General Assembly's budgeted $1 million for the project, and the executive is recommending showing that as, again, supplanting county funds, but also accelerating the design by 1 year. And so the committee recommended approval of that. Under traffic improvements projects, the pedestrian safety program, which we already talked about some today, there is a further MDOT grant of $720,000 for 4 pedestrian hybrid beacons, 2 in Friendship Heights and 2 in North Bethesda. And this is on top of everything else that committees and councils recommended doing. Committee recommended approval of that. The White Oak Local Area Transportation Improvements Program, the first UMP that we have, the Urban Mobility Program, is close to being 6 years old, and in the directive that the council had approved back in 2016, I guess it was, or 2015, was that every 6 years the program needed to be reevaluated to look at what is the needs and also what is the development that could pay for it. And so DOT needs funds to be able to actually do that work. So the executive recommended adding $150,000 in FY23 to do that. Committee agreed with that. White Flint Metro Station access improvements is a project that you approved back in March, but the new piece of news is that DOT has been able to receive $360,000 from another project, state-funded project, which can be used to supplant funds, some county funds for that. The committee agreed with that. And then
Councilmember Reamer had a question or comment on this.
Sure.
I just want to make the observation here. We had quite a debate about providing a tax incentive for development at the metro station.
This is the next project. This is the next project you're talking about.
And I will wait for you to introduce that topic.
Okay, sorry about that. The next project is the what's called the state-funded White Flint Redevelopment Infrastructure Project, which did go to both Fed and T&E just last week. And the state had provided $16 million for improvements in North Bethesda, around the White Flint station generally, for redevelopment projects that related to transportation. And the executive had recommended programming that for in FY23 and 24. The committee agrees with that, except instead of appropriating the full $10 million for FY23, there's only $8.1 million that's been really identified specifically for what work would be done, which is to grade the site, to build the streets on the other 2 legs of the site. And we're talking about a site that's basically a block and a half east of the White Flint Metro Station along the south side of Old Georgetown Road. If you know where the Harris Teeter is, it's basically up the street from there. It's between Harris Teeter and the metro station. And then leaving the rest of the money, the other $7.9 million, essentially as a placeholder, which could then be programmed or appropriated for other related ideas that would meet the same purpose of that state money. And there are several possibilities for that money could be used. One is actually helping further close the funding gap for the White Flint Metro Station North entrance, but also could be used for building the master plan bikeway, separated bikeway along Old Georgetown Road between Neville Street and Rockville Pike, or any additional cost of the original $8.1 million, or anything else that's really related. And the joint committees recommended approval of that by 5-0. Now,
Well, a couple of general comments here. First of all, the council, as we all know, passed a law creating a tax incentive for development on metro stations, and we're seeing terrific results. We've got 2 projects that have moved forward now under this new framework, the Grosvenor project, as well as a high-rise a little bit east of this exact site on WMATA property at the North Bethesda Metro Station, formerly White Flint Metro Station. So we're getting results from the council's action immediately. There was a mid-rise, low-rise project that shifted to high-rise because of our project. I think putting money into the development costs at this station site is a good idea. I think the bigger point here is the tax incentive that we passed is still not enough. We've got the executive who knows that this tax incentive exists and will be there to support future development, still sending us millions more dollars of county investment in site preparation. That's the point. It's really expensive to develop on top of Metro. And if it weren't for the tax incentive, we would have to see a bigger capital investment by the county when that project finally comes forward, which at this point there's no indication that it ever will. But we will proceed through this to prep the site and then see what possibilities are. So I said a lot more at the joint committee. I won't repeat myself, but I think this certainly was resounding proof that the council's law was necessary, and the proof is in the pudding right here.
Thank you.
and then the last set of projects are the Parking Lot District CIP. And the executive recommended changes, some small changes to the facility planning program for all 3 districts, Bethesda, Silver Spring, and Wheaton. And in the renovations PDFs for the 3 districts, there's quite a bit of additional work. A lot of this was work, actually, though, that had been deferred during the pandemic because of the lack of revenue coming into the parking lot district. A lot of elevator modernizations, plan expansion of the electric vehicle ports, et cetera. And the committee recommended approval of that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you. Appreciate the committee's work as always. I just want to also highlight, I'm really appreciative, as we all are, to the General Assembly. I mean, there's several millions of dollars, it might be more than 10 million here, but at least 8 million that I've counted, to support our roads that really need it. And, you know, the Norwood Road in particular, as we mentioned, this is like, normally wouldn't want to remove a CIP item, but this is the great removal. And because the state stepped up, and I want to give a shout out to Majority Leader Eric Lukey and others, this has been an issue since I've been a kid almost, you know. So the fact that we're going to see this program, I know I still look pretty young, but I'm not as young. I'm not the youngest member of this council, by the way. Yeah, Sidney Katz is. But the fact that, you know, I was looking at a video the other night when I read the packet. There was a dangerous YouTube video in like 2011 of Norwood Road, and the community has been advocating for that since that time. And the fact that we're going to have $4 million programmed next year, over the next 2 years, to develop, that's a big deal, and we kind of just glossed over it. I agree with Councilmember Rice that we need to look at the up county. There's significant issues there too, and I'm glad we're going to do that assessment. But it shows that when we take action, similar to what we do with free fares, it can prompt other people to take action. I don't think this would have happened as quickly if we didn't put that 750 in for that. So I'm happy about the Cherry Hill, the White Oak Bike Path as well. But this is just really exciting that we're going to get this going. So appreciate the work of our colleagues in Annapolis. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, appreciate it. I just want to echo the appreciation for the state delegation. I think it certainly helps to now have capital budget chair from Montgomery County, Craig Zucker, who's been really helpful here. And special shout out to the District 16 team and Mark Corman, particularly on the White Flint redevelopment. Now the North Bethesda redevelopment projects around the metro area. And I just wanted to note for colleagues, we had an extensive conversation with, about that, and Councilmember Reamer noted some of it related to the council's efforts. But I wanted to highlight the interest in making sure that the funding from the state specifically goes to infrastructure. And we had talked about that extensively, and that was agreed upon at the committee and wasn't quite highlighted. And so I just wanted to note that we had some conversation about the $360,000, and that was clarified to a certain extent. There were some concerns raised about supplanting funds, but the most important aspect, and I just wanted to reiterate it here in front of the whole council, was that the funding for the redevelopment efforts need to be centered around actually making it more walkable, more accessible, more transit focused to realize the full vision of what this area is supposed to be. And the second metro entrance at what will be North Bethesda Metro. Thank you to Transportation Chair Hucker for reminding us of that and the efforts by the executive and the council and stakeholders on that. But I think that is really critical, and that is the central focal point of all of the infrastructure in that area, and appreciate the work that the T&E committee has done on that, but we've got to move the needle on that project, and we've got to move it quickly. And this funding helps us to realize the redevelopment opportunity, but we also have to realize the rest of the infrastructure to create the livable, walkable vision that was the White Flint sector plan and continues to be what we envision the North Bethesda Pike District area to be. So I just wanted to note that for colleagues. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Rice will have the last comment on this.
Well, thank you very much. And as a member who's going to be stepping off of this council, I just want to impart that it's hard sometimes to really look at some of these decisions that are made in the face of true racial equity and social justice. Building a sidewalk, making sure bus stops are where they are, matter so much to our community and to so many individuals. The reality is that even the conversations around that some of our more socioeconomically impacted and people of color only ride public transportation, when the reality is a large amount of them drive cars. They might not be nice cars. They might break down on the side of the road, but they still drive too. And understanding that they need access to roads and to all the other things that everybody else who is fortunate enough to have them are all a part of the conversation that we just need to keep in our minds as we move forward. And it's my hope that much of the progress that this department has made in terms of embracing some of those things continues, but we can do better across the board. And I think that it's important for us to make sure that we continue to engage with our public. It's the same conversation that I had with Director Anderson one day when we were talking about, well, is there really a need for racial equity and social justice when it comes to evaluating planning? Because, it's FAR and, building heights and, those kinds of things. And it all does matter. It does. Every single bit of it. Because the simple fact of inclusion and having people involved in the decisions that are made, even if it's not going to directly impact them, impacts them. And so I would just say that as we look forward to what it is that we're doing with so many of these projects and how they're going to roll out, the impacts that they have on individuals, and it's not something that deals with DOT per se, but is something that's in your purview. We just closed 118 to do some paving. And I know that's the state. But the very interesting thing is that the impacts that it had on those who could call into work and say, I'm going to be late, versus the ones who are in shift work who had no idea and no communication about those things that were happening, the buses that were delayed, all those kinds of things have huge impacts on our community. And so we have to start thinking more about every single little nuanced piece of what it is that we do if we're going to really truly embrace this ideology around this racial equity and social justice. And so I'm proud to support this budget. While I didn't agree with some of the nuanced points, I think that overall we're headed in the right direction. And I encourage you to continue thinking about these kinds of things as we move forward and involve and engage our community with whoever is going to be the person who follows in my footsteps as the District 2 representative for the Up County, but then also for all of the new members as we continue to make sure that we have one of the best places for our Montgomery County residents. And you all are an integral part of making that happen. And I appreciate the partnership that we've had over the years and hope that you will continue to build on that in the many years that you're going to serve here. So thank you, Director Conklin.
All right. So we've got a committee recommendation. All those in favor of the committee recommendation to support the CIP revisions, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous among all those present. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the comments.
We now move on to the next item on the agenda, and we thank them for their patience. The police department, please come forward. Chairman Katz, I'm going to make just a couple of opening comments and then turn it over to you to make some opening comments. Thank you. As the chief is getting settled, just a quick point of privilege. I had the opportunity, as council presidents do every year, to attend and speak on behalf of my colleagues at the Commemoration Ceremony, in which we recognize the officers that have fallen in the line of duty. And it was an incredibly moving experience. It's the first one that we had had in person in almost 3 years, but it gave me an opportunity to interact with the family members and friends and colleagues of those that have died in the line of duty, and it just sort of reminded us of the importance of this work in an incredibly sobering and acute way. And I really appreciate the budget deliberation discussion with regards to the police department. There are many complicated issues here. This council has been aggressive in helping to ensure, in partnership with our police department, that we have transparency and accountability and build off of the institution that we have here before us, recognizing this moment in time that we are in, but also recognizing that more than half of the police department right now is eligible for retirement as we speak. And it's an even higher number among police leadership. And we are committed to addressing the recruitment and retention challenges that are not just facing our department, but other departments across the country. And we know, as we've heard repeatedly from constituents, that a rise in crime is of deep concern. And obviously that is more complicated than just the police department's budget, but we have to recognize that police play a critical role in addressing those issues, especially in the short term. So I just wanted to establish that as context before we go into these budget discussions. And I'll turn it over to my colleague and friend, Chairman Katz of our Public Safety Committee, to make some opening comments as well. And then I'm sure he will turn it over to Ms. Farag to walk us through the packet and obviously allow Chief Jones to speak if he'd like to at the beginning as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and your words are so very correct. I walked in late to the Heroes Ceremony during the day, but my wife and I attended, I guess it was the first candlelight vigil that the police department had the night before, and of course it was very moving. And we got to see. I've been to the event, not the candlelight vigil, to the other event before, and I got to see many families that we see each year for the sacrifice that the families have made. And I did want to point out, and we're going to turn to her very quickly, and thank Ms. Farag for all of her hard work. The only addition that we had, and I want to publicly thank Vice President Glass for bringing this to our attention, but the committee did vote to have the Cadets Program go from 12 to 25 people, and which is, of course, a wonderful program as well. And other than that, the committee did vote to recommend the approval as submitted by the county executive. And with your approval, Mr. President, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Farag, please.
Yes, Council, please. Sorry, Council. Oh, afterwards. Okay. Ms. Farag.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. The recommended 23 budget for the police department is about $296 million. That's about a 4.5% increase from last year's approved budget, and it also adds 24 positions. As Chair Katz had mentioned, they recommended approval of the entire budget as submitted by the county executive, with the addition of Councilmember Vice President Glass's recommendation to add at least 13 cadets to the existing program. And for those who don't know, the cadet program is a paid program for college students who put in about 20 hours a week working in the police department. It provides them an insider's view of all different aspects of police work and provides them with a much more realistic idea of what the profession actually entails. So therefore, if they go on to apply to the police department, it's more realistic that they will stay within the profession and complete the academy and go forward in their careers. But it also helps attract local talent for the police department, as well as more diverse candidate pool. So the total costs of that reconciliation list item are about $409,000, which is more expensive than what we discussed at committee. There were additional operating expenditures that we worked out with OMB. I just wanted to put that out there for council consideration, and council staff is happy to work out a tiered approach to this if you deem the $409,000 to be too expensive, adding instead 10 cadets or 5 cadets, 10 cadets, and 13 cadets. As far as the issues that the committee discussed, the department remains critically understaffed. It has 1,281 authorized sworn positions, but 72 are currently vacant. Of the civilian professional positions it has, which are 731 authorized positions, 106 are currently vacant. And why does this matter? The committee has talked ad nauseum really about the recruitment and retention problems that the police department faces. And again, it's national, but that national pressure is also impacting the county, right? They are competing against everyone in the region, other police departments that are very well paid. Their starting salaries are much higher. There's a list on page 13 of how MCPD compares to both municipal and park police departments, as well as other county entities within the region. And they're pretty low on the list. That has prompted in collective bargaining, and this is a GO issue, and Mr. Howard will get into much more detail about this on Friday when he brings the GO's compensation follow-ups to your attention. There was a collective bargaining agreement proposal for the FOP, which is up through sergeants, and that will increase their salaries up to 13.5% for FY23. It's an immediate 7% increase starting July 1st, which will put the starting salaries much more on par with the local jurisdictions and hopefully help recruitment. So that was initially discussed at the April 21st meeting for GO, where Councilmember Katz asked whether or not that GWA that the FOP had bargained could be passed through to police management. After that Public Safety Committee work session where they discussed the reasons why that type of increase was necessary for management, and that goes back to staffing and understaffing and the various pressures that are on the police department right now. They have over 20 police reform mandates that have been placed on them in the past 2 years. Even though it's good change, it's still change and it still can be stressful, and you still need sufficient staffing and resources to make sure those reforms go through. They're also, as you noted earlier, they're facing increasing violent crime in the community. I think we're on track to surpass last year's homicide rate if it continues, and unfortunately, historically, homicides tend to increase in the summer. So they've got these additional pressures working on them, plus they're short-staffed, quite frankly, and they're having problems, with sufficient numbers in the recruit class. I believe they have 12 in the current class. When I started reviewing police, they had 55. So, there's an attrition chart attached to the packet that shows if they can't address recruitment, they will be 223 officers short by FY25. And that puts it, we're already starting below the recommended number of police per capita. In counties and suburban jurisdictions, they have between 2.5 and 2.8 police per 1,000 residents. Right now, MCPD has 1.2 per 1,000 residents. So the other issues that they discussed were adding the 24 positions, all but three of which are civilian positions. These include 15 staff at the Emergency Communications Center to civilianize fire dispatch positions, 2 sergeants for random body-worn camera video reviews, 1 police officer and 1 administrative specialist for recruitment, 2 civilian positions to assist with MPI requests, 1 IT specialist for body-worn camera redaction and MPIA requests, needs. And I just wanted to note they currently have one person who does that, and that one person received $132,000 in overtime compensation alone last year for the amount of work that that person was performing. There are also 2 crossing guards included for the new elementary school in Gaithersburg. Operationally, the budget adds 300 body-worn cameras to meet requirements of County Bill 1821. Also includes 90 replacement mobile video cameras for cars. That's replacing old equipment. The Panasonic interceptors are no longer supported, and they're moving toward an Axon product. And they're also included is a less lethal protective instrument or pepper ball guns. The way I had constructed the committee discussion a couple of weeks ago was to look at the police reform mandates and ensure that they had sufficient resources and staffing to make them happen effectively. Now, state mandates are generally never funded, and these were no exception, and the police are handling those within existing resources. There were 2 bills, county bills, that required some resources, and those include 1821, which provides body-worn cameras to all officers whenever the officer is on duty wearing a uniform or prominently displaying insignia indicating that they are a police officer. It also requires random review of a statistically valid sample size of all body-worn camera recordings, and it has certain reporting requirements. And that fiscal impact statement, when the bill was moving through consideration, was almost $1 million, and that is not included in the budget. Instead, there's about $765,000 included, and that includes the 2 sergeants that we discussed earlier to review random body-worn camera footage. Those 2 sergeants will report directly to the Office of the Chief, and also the 300 new body-worn cameras for almost $600,000. The current policy right now for body-worn cameras is that each officer has 2, and one acts as a backup. One is charging while the officer has the other one in use. And initially, that's what the prior fiscal estimate was based on. This, instead of extending 600 cameras, is going to extend 300 to make sure that all police officers have at least 1 camera to meet the bill's requirements. The other bill is Bill 4520, which was effective February 14th of this year, and that broadly expanded the demographic data requirements that the police department should track from what was required in Bill 3319, and this is every stop of an individual in the community and tracking that information by race, ethnicity, gender, and any other demographic information that's voluntarily provided by the detainees. And that fiscal impact was approximately $225,000. There is no specific funding included in this recommended budget for that bill. However, the department advises it's using a more fiscally prudent approach and using current resources. And those include having a new technology director who's assessing and modifying their data and IT work processes to make them more efficient. And they also filled an IT supervisor position that had been mentioned in the fiscal estimate. Additionally, in this recommended budget, if approved, there are 2 administrative positions that are assisting with MPIA requests. They'll also be able to assist with this workflow. So those changes together should meet the bill's requirements, and the committee discussed following up on both of these bills and implementation of police mandates in general in the fall, just to make sure that the police department is appropriately staffed moving forward and has sufficient resources to do so. Other than that, we did discuss a little bit about hiring 15 public safety emergency communications specialists for $720,000. There's actually 12 of the telecommunicators, and there's also 1 IT specialist and 2 administrative specialist positions. I brought up the concern at the time. They currently have, of an authorized complement at the ECC of 183, I believe. They currently have 42 vacancies, and 40 of those vacancies are telecommunicators. So I was concerned trying to hire an additional 12 when they have challenges filling the current 40 might be problematic, and this is something that is worth watching at this point. But there was also recent legislation in the General Assembly, Senate Bill 295, I believe, that redefines a telecommunicator as a first responder, and it indicates that all jurisdictions should treat those first responders with commensurate on their need, their expertise, and the services that they deliver as a first responder. They also allowed for an increase in the 911 fee that is put on every single telephone line in the county at this point, including mobile phones. And if the department chooses to look into that, it may be perhaps something that they could use to increase revenues to a sufficient amount to have something of a more traditional pension system for telecommunicators, which was mentioned anecdotally within the department as something that would really help with retention. So again, there's retention issues, recruiting and retention issues on the civilian side as well as the sworn side, and some of these proposals in the FY23 budget are to help remedy that, particularly the salary increases. They also have the one police officer position and one civilian position that's meant to help enhance recruitment, hopefully, if the raises for the police are passed. And as amended by the county executive, the 6.5% GWA was passed through to the police leadership service. That encompasses lieutenants and captains. There's a chart on page 14 that shows that the turnover that you've had in police management over the past 3 years and the retirement eligibility, and they're very significant in all categories. So if those are passed through, it is hopeful that both recruitment and retention will stabilize a little bit so that the department can meet these growing challenges.
Thank you, Ms. Farag. Chief Jones, do you want to make a couple opening comments?
So good morning. Good morning. Pushing the wrong buttons this morning. Thank you to the council, and I want to thank Ms. Farag for a job well done on this budget, as well as Mr. Taman Hall. As we move forward and as we have significant challenges, as you can tell with the budget and with retention as well as hiring, I think it's vitally important in this budget. We really see things such as the Cadet Program, which are vital to the success of us bringing in new recruits to our department. Just last week when I was at the memorial service, and thank you, Council President Albornoz, for your presence, as well as Council Member Katz at our memorial and our vigil, which is a very moving and a very important program for us annually. Because of the significance of officers who have given the ultimate sacrifice, and their families and their fellow colleagues, and that's important. But as I was there, I spoke to two cadets at that very, I spoke to a range, there were several cadets there, but there were two who I was advised that who have agreed to join our police department and who were in the midst of finalizing their final offers. And being hired early for the August class. And to me, that is an example. And I thank Council Vice President Glass for making the recommendation to increase our cadet program, because I think it is an example of us being forward thinking and really trying to grow our department from within the county, from individuals who grew up here and who have been embedded into Montgomery County, our culture and understanding, and who go to school mostly here, and who understand Montgomery County really well. So I think this is a plus. But I think, again, with the challenges, whether we are in professional staff with for example, with our Emergency Communications Center, I think it's going to be vitally important as we move forward to think about a new retirement system for them. It's something I often hear from them that's important. And as we look at even our hiring challenges, understanding that Montgomery County, we require 60 college credits as a minimum. And most of our competitors do not. And as we bring officers on the department, understanding that those officers are bringing college debt with them. And so salaries are important, and not only in sort of their earning wages, but of understanding that they have debt, to include housing debt, as we try to ensure and try to provide affordable housing to them to the best of our ability to get them, because we want to make sure that people not only who want to come here, but who if they have to commute, that they don't have such an extensive commute that it impacts them negatively and may force them to go to another jurisdiction. So with that being said, again, I just want to thank everyone for the excellent presentation presented by Ms. Farag.
Thank you. I had a couple of context questions, Ms. Farag, and several of my colleagues are in the queue, but there was significant support for the expansion of the homeowner's tax credit that the General Assembly allowed local jurisdictions to take advantage of, and we'd had a joint committee session. We were asked by the executive branch to hold off on taking that action, and I understand there's been some progress made, but I don't know if you're in a position right now to be able to talk about is that been factored into the FOP contract, or was an amendment to it? And have we discussed whether and confirm whether that has been factored in being extended into non-represented police officers as well?
I'm not the person on the council side who would be best able to answer that question. Christine Wellens handled the collective bargaining agreements, and I can check with her and get back to the whole council, and I'm not sure what Chief Jones might be able to fill in.
I have seen nothing as relates to that in the approved CBA to this point.
Okay. So when we do, if we could just make a note, make sure we cover that tomorrow, because I know Councilman Navarro and I had been on hold, bringing it back to joint committee pending a negotiation between the executive branch and labor. And then the second context question is, you had mentioned the, which I fully support, expanding the pass-through expanded benefits to non-represented and represented. Is that one for one, or was there some adjustments made to non-represented versus represented?
So it was more appropriately discussed in GO, and Mr. Howard will bring this back in detail on Friday. But what has happened is the county executive's amendment to the budget, it passes through the 6.5% GWA only. So the FOP, the chart I'd put on page 2, the FOP CBA proposed FY23 compensation changes. They get a total of 6.5% in a GWA. They also get their service increment of 3.5%, which is payment for doing their jobs appropriately. The salary schedule adjustment is a new thing, which is 3.5% in addition to these different changes, and that's why that 3.5% plus the 3.5% GWA is why everything starts up at 7% on July 1st. And then they also created a new longevity step at 15 years for 3.5%. So in total, FOP could get up to 13.5% based on, depending on where their step falls, their service increment. Police leadership service under the county executive's budget amendment could get up to 12.5%. And that includes the pay for performance piece, which is up to 6%. It's my understanding, and Mr. Howard knows much better than me on this, people rarely get the 6%. And there's some concern that if your salary is up at the top of the pay band, you're not going to get that anyway, and it would come as a bonus that doesn't add to the base salary. So that, again, is dealing with some more compression issues. So, again, it would be FOP at 13.5% and PLS, which is lieutenants and captains, at 12.5% max, right? So.
Thank you. I just wanted that context, and obviously will be to be continued as we go through GO, but I just want to be on the record. Every other previous administration had matched the non-represented compensation increases with those that had been represented. And it sends the right message. And in this particular area, what we haven't discussed is there has been organically, in the best positive way, in my opinion, that we've had sort of a naturally occurring advancements within the police department. I met Chief Jones 16 years ago when he was still, in Silver Spring, and and obviously had been serving in different capacities in advance of that. And so we need to keep that organic system going, because as we train and work and develop the best and brightest among our officers, we want to encourage them to go through the management tracks, because they have that experience, they have that context. And I'll note that headhunters from across the country often poach officers from Montgomery County for leadership positions because of the additional training that they receive here. So, and that is happening right now, I know for a fact. So I think it's important for us to maintain consistency, and I look forward to the expanded conversation, but it's going to be really important that that matches up, in my opinion. I've got several colleagues in the queue. I've got Council Vice President Glass, followed by Councilmember Jawando, and then Councilmember Reamer. and then Councilmember Friedson after Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate this conversation, setting it up, and recognizing the challenges that we have here in Montgomery County, which, truth be told, are not unlike challenges that other jurisdictions are experiencing. Nationwide, we know that homicides are up by 40%, and according to the National Police Foundation, approximately 86% of police departments are experiencing staff shortages. And so we need to be creative, and we need to be innovative in how we fill those gaps and move forward, quite frankly, with the goal in mind and making sure that everyone feels safe in our community. And it means different things to different people, but we want everybody to feel safe in our community. And so how we engage in our outreach and retention and recruitment tools, I think, are just going to be really important. And I want to extend my appreciation to the Public Safety Chair and the committee members for accepting my recommendation to enhance the Cadet Program, which I think has been an overlooked tool to support the efforts that we all agree upon. And when we hire more people from our own community, I quite frankly think that is the definition of community policing. No one knows their community better than people from that community. And while they are college students who work approximately 20 hours, I think of it more as a paid internship and also creating those economic and educational opportunities for those kids. But I think when you go one level deeper into what the Cadet Program also does, it's important to highlight the educational opportunities that those young people receive. As they rotate assignments, and I'm looking at the notes that I took in conversations with cadet graduates who shared with me the pride and joy that they have, that they had in going through the program. They rotated assignments and learned about Maryland criminal and constitutional law, use of force policies, and the role that implicit bias has in decision making. Those are things that we're talking about in so many different areas, and we're talking about making sure that current officers get up to speed on some of that. And if we already onboard people, young people, with that in mind, eyes wide open, I think that clearly is a step in the right direction. Last point I'll make about this program and why we need to expand it is because it is literally the diversity that we want represented in our police force. In the year 2020, there were 15 participants. 5 were Latino, 4 were Black, and 2 were members of the Asian American Pacific Islander community. 75% diversity rate. It's actually the mirror image of what our current police force is, which is approximately 75% white. And so as Montgomery County continues to grow and to diversify, this is the embodiment of that, people from our community serving in the ranks alongside. And so I appreciate the Public Safety Committee support. I hope the full council will support this so that we can continue supporting our efforts to make all residents feel safe in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Giwando, followed by Councilmember Reamer, then Councilmember Friedson, then Councilmember Rice.
Thank you. Couple things. I really appreciate Chief. Good to see all the chiefs here. We've got the ones in the audience too. Good to see you, and thank you, Ms. Frog, for the packet. As I have in previous years, I'm happy to approve these increases as we did a few weeks ago in pay. I think that's a big tool in your toolbox to make sure you can keep folks here that can afford to live here to our community policing efforts. So I think I'm really happy to see that. Always believe we need to have, high standards, but we need to have high and appropriate pay too, to go along with that. And just like we want with all of our public employees. I too was very heartened by the cadet enhancement. We started talking about that in the context of the Community Informed Police Act, which we will pick up after budget. But that could be a good complement. And I was talking to Chair Katz here about dovetailing that 30 hours of training as a recruitment tool, but also this bolstered relationship with Montgomery College, where we have 600-700 on any given year criminal justice students studying right now that reflect the diversity of our community, some of whom have been cadets. And so I think that's really exciting. Just as a technical point, Ms. Farag brought this up. I do think it would make sense to be consistent to put it in tranches, on the list, because we're doing that in other areas. But I just wanted to make sure you said maybe we should, but I don't know. It sounds like it isn't. I just want to ask.
It's not currently. If the council wishes, I can formulate the costs for 5 cadets,
Because it was
10
13
cadets, and 13
total, right?
Yes, 13 total at this point.
So could you do if you could figure out what that would be, I don't know, 553 or 76, or I don't know if there's a magic number. Hopefully we can do them both, but there's a big pot. We've been talking about that all this morning. So, yeah, please.
I appreciate Councilmember Jawando asking for that as we try to achieve yes, right? But just want to clarify that the reason it originally wasn't in tranches is because we were instructed anything under $500,000 did not need to be in tranches, and so that's why it was structured that way.
Okay. And the amount now is just like right at that. It's right just below that. Or?
It's $409,000.
Okay. Well, then I won't push it there.
Okay.
You can leave it there. I plan to support it. I'm not going to hide the ball. I'm not going to say it's a great thing and then say break it up so I can't support one. I want to support the whole thing. As Chief and others know, I did the AmeriCorps program and served with Montgomery County Police. I did the FBI honors internship, which was like an on-ramp to the FBI. I ended up being a civil rights lawyer, but I ended up learning a lot about what I wanted to do. That's what these programs are for, whether you want to pursue a certain path or not, and hopefully a population will pursue a path in law enforcement. I wanted to ask just 2 questions of the Chief. You all are still participating in the Summer Rise program as well. I know in the past that you had, is that still going on, right?
Yes, that's still occurring, yes, with our community engagement division.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Good.
Yes.
And I know that we want to make sure for the high school, we want to keep as many pathways and exposure as possible going. And the other question I had here, the IT specialists. In the packet, we talk a lot about the requirements of the data bill that I put forward with colleagues, the state bills. This is really important to improving community relations. There's a big, we want to know the data in a really timely way. I know you want to know. Could you just talk about, I think I read in the packet earlier that you have a new IT director and you're hiring for an IT supervisor, and just how that, where that is in process and how that interplays with your ability to report on the data that we've required in these bills.
Thank you, Council Member. So, yes, we do have a new director. Again, another great story, hired from within Montgomery County. She's doing excellent work, and she's dealing with a lot of projects right now. A couple of them, the expansion of the TASER program and working on our MDCs. The biggest one is our records management system that we're in the contract process for, which that's going to be a key to collecting data. We want a central point that collects all of the items that are coming from different directions in a very unified way that makes it simple on officers as they go about their duty to collect the data that we're also interested in. So by her coming on board and then hiring her replacement, it enables us to further assess what we are doing in our technology division. Our technology is very different from other county agencies. We're a 24/7 operation. We can't go down. And I think all county agencies want that too, but it becomes more critical in law enforcement. So as they assess that, we're determining other needs and how to better position our people, and one of those is the IT specialist. And the IT specialist, what we have is we do have, because let's say Apple doesn't write everything for all the police departments to do everything. We have multiple different systems, and what we find we have to do is we have to draw data from different points, and we need IT specialists to be able to draw that data, write the programming, and pull it in so we can get it efficiently and in a quick manner. So that's what that's for. But there is a cascading effect, because with anyone. With our new director, she wants the best people possible on her team that understand the demands that we expect in Montgomery County. So getting her replacement into place and then moving down the line, that's what we're going to. And she, again, doing a great job right now. In fact, I believe she's got meetings this week on our RMS system.
Okay. And, that's, we can follow up offline. I just think it's important, since that is a budget item. I'd like to have a meeting just on that topic, and it can be something, hopefully we can come back to the joint, my other committee that I'm often in public safety. And on the record management, that's something that was, again, prior to us, it was appropriated before this council came in. So how close are we to actually being totally complete and transitioned?
So we're very close. We're near the end of our contract negotiations, and again, we're working very hard to get the best contract for Montgomery County residents.
Yeah.
We expect a lot, and we should. We expect we're looking to be under contract by the summer with implementation in 18 months, and the ideal for us is to roll out the new records management system in January of 2024. Okay. So that will allow us on a calendar year to switch over, because we have a lot of issues with comparing data year to year, and when you fracture them in a system like that. So with an 18-month implementation, we feel very good about hitting January 2024.
Okay. And obviously, in the interim, you will report on required metrics using your current capabilities.
Absolutely, and again, going back to the position that we've requested, that becomes very important right now in the things that we don't have in that central system, or that we will never be able to have in that central system. They help to draw that information in, write the programming for that, and so there's still going to be a need. Because again, we don't have one total solution because of all the different actors in the industry.
Got it. Okay. I appreciate that. More to talk about, but I appreciate the update. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask a little bit more about the management compensation issue. So again, Susan, that's coming in a subsequent conversation. Okay, but to follow up on the Council President's comments, I was very surprised to see that the compensation agreements that the county executive reached with the FOP were not passed along to management, and I think that's wrong. I just think that it is proven that the caliber of leadership in the department has a huge impact not only on reducing crime, but also on success with implementing public policy goals. Like all of the reform efforts we've been putting into place, they rely upon great management. And if we have a structure in our police department where it doesn't really make sense for a police officer to become a manager because they have to put in more hours, more responsibility, but they're not necessarily getting a meaningful pay increase, then they won't take on those additional responsibilities. And we have to have a real ladder here where our best are incentivized to become managers, to take on that role. There was actually a study that was just completed recently, the National Bureau of Economic Research, and they looked at jurisdictions all across the country, and what they found was that the difference in one community's success with crime, as well as issues like use of force, had more to do with the issues around their success in attracting great management than in anything else. Those communities had similar levels, similar socioeconomic conditions, similar challenges, in executing the work, but it was the caliber of management that really made it work. So, we want to ensure that our department has a progression in it, and we'll take this up, I know, but like the Council President, I just want to be firmly on the record here that our police management needs this council to stand behind it, and that's why over the years I've fought for measures like reforming effects bargaining. It's why I've proposed that we remove certain items from bargaining. Our management needs to be able to manage, and we need to also have incentives in place so that they will become managers. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson, followed by Councilmember Rice.
Thank you for that. We had a long and robust discussion in the Government Operations Fiscal Policy Committee specifically about this issue. I agree with colleagues that it's a problem, and I'm glad that we are attempting to fix it. I will just note, and we don't need to get into detail here since I imagine we'll discuss it in further detail when the item comes before us through the compensation discussion. but it's not a good situation in general. This is kind of a temporary fix, or what is being described as a fix, to try to address what is a significant challenge. The Police Leadership Service program and system is not really working the way that it was intended. There are major wage compression challenges that do go beyond this one decision. I will say it has been a pattern of not extending the same benefits to non-represented employees across the board over several budgets, which is an alarming and concerning pattern that should stop and is not the tradition of the county historically. But on this particular issue, we need to do a deep dive on this, because the reason and rationale behind the establishment of the Police Leadership Service and what it's actually resulting in has been mismatched. And we need to figure out a way to reconcile that. And so we're not going to be able to do it during this budget process, and there's going to be a deeper discussion on that. But before we go too far down this conversation, I did want to note that, and we did discuss that extensively, and also noted that we weren't in a position to really do the deep dive that is required, that needs to be addressed after we get through the budget. So I just thought it was important to note that, colleagues. And I see Chairman Katz of the Public Safety Committee, my colleague on the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, is nodding because we did talk quite a bit about that. So I just thought it was important to note that. A couple questions on this. The cadet program, I really appreciate Council Vice President Glass pushing this forward. I think it is important. I have interacted with a number of our cadets. It is important that we have a recruitment pipeline. It is critical that we recruit our own community members to be part of our police force. If we want a diverse police force that knows our community, we've got a diverse community. Let's recruit from within our community. It's good for everybody. It's good for public safety. It's good for the community, and it's good for the county. Just curious, though, in terms of adding 13 cadets, how likely are we to fill those spots? I mean, we have a major recruiting problem of police. Is that same recruiting challenge existing in cadets, or are we, more likely, if the funding is there, to actually be able to bring the cadets online?
No, I think we have a fabulous opportunity, and I think that we have more success in really recruiting cadets. In fact, we have probably more cadet applications than we are able to, we're not able to fill because you had a limit on the positions. And, the positions are sort of, again, understanding that the cadet program is a 2-year program. And so generally the cadets are kind of pushed into 2 years to pursue their college education, or as they're pursuing their college education, because some cadets may come in, they're already in college for 2 years. And knowing that law enforcement is where they're going, or that's the area that they're searching, then they will complete in 2 years. So sometimes you have staggered positions that become open. So for example, as we're losing a couple who are getting ready to go into the academy class next September, we'll be filling those positions, and we have people on standby ready to go into those slots. So I think it is highly likely that we'll be able to fill those slots if we have with an aggressive campaign.
Well, that's good news. I will note it raises the concerns that we have broadly about recruitment. If we have 13 cadets and only 12 recruits, that really reflects the challenges that we face in public safety that we need to do better. I know this budget is working at addressing that, but that is a ringing alarm bell, I think, for all of us when it comes to these issues. When it comes to cadets, do you have percentage of how many of the cadets that go through the program end up in Montgomery County Police Department?
Yeah, I think we've had a very high successful rate. I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that we've been pretty successful, that the predominant number of people who've gone into the cadet program have either have come into the department as a police officer or as a professional staff member. They may not all be police officers. They may decide to take another career track. We have had some individuals who've gone on to other departments. Yes, that is the risk that we take because of a variety of reasons. But the reality, I think, is we've had we've had a large number of successful candidates who actually have come to the department, and to add to that, diverse candidates, which is as important.
Appreciate that. If you have the data,
Yeah,
the demographic data is
we'll get you
important,
the data number.
but I think the
from that.
matriculation data is critical too, because if this
Absolutely.
is
I
seen
would
as
agree.
a recruitment tool, it'd be helpful to know how many we're actually recruiting to Montgomery County Police Department as opposed to policing, which
Yes.
are two different things.
Absolutely.
And so I think that would be helpful. You mentioned earlier as part of this, some of the challenges with the regional competitiveness in police recruiting is one, pay, which we're trying to address here. However, imperfectly, we are addressing it, and it takes time. The other you mentioned is minimum qualifications of what our qualifications are that we require and the standards that we have in Montgomery County Police versus regional counterparts. And one of the things that you said is the college education, 4-year college education. Excuse me, 2 years. That's what I meant to say, and I didn't say.
It's all good.
So a 2-year college education. So is that something you've taken a look at, or are other jurisdictions rethinking their view on this that would make them more in line with where we are? Is there a rethinking of whether our standard is appropriate? And I'm not advocating here one way or the other, to be
Right.
very clear. I'm just curious. I mean, we have a recruiting problem.
Right.
We all recognize we have a recruiting problem. We're not unique in this sense, but we do have some challenges.
Sure.
Just wondering, what that looks like in terms of the regional and national landscape.
I would just say, competitively, we've been able to, again, as we have the challenges, we've made some adjustments in the years past. For example, now we do add, not that you just have to have 2 years of college, but you could substitute 3 years of military service, honorable discharge. So we've included those candidates as well and that's been successful. I have not considered removing the minimum college requirement. I think it still is a standard that we've had for this county for a very long time, for over 40 plus years. I think it's been successful. When we talk about the management track, we require all of our sergeants and above to have 4-year degrees. I think that's been a benefit for us as well. So I think that, even though we know that we may have a little bit of a different market, we've seen that even individuals who may not have the college when they first come or may want to apply for Montgomery County, we have seen individuals who've gone on to other police agencies, gained experience, went to college, and then came to our department once they met the minimum requirements to do so, because of, I think, again, the quality of this department. So though I know it's a challenge in today's environment, because, again, there are law enforcement departments, as we just talked about, across the country who don't have any college requirement, and they're having challenges as hiring. And I think, again, if we're really looking at maintaining our status quo and our standards, I think we really should keep that to this point. But I'll continue to review that as time moves on, particularly it's a very short time, because we know that time is ticking and we've got a large amount of officers and our attrition rate is going to be moving at a fast pace.
Well, I appreciate that answer. I tend to agree with you. I just wanted to hear it from you and was curious. And related to that, there's a lot of movement with Montgomery County Public Schools and working towards career and technical training, and even having many of our high school graduates graduating with certifications and with even potentially associate's degrees, or being close to that. Are there any conversations that have taken place or maybe taking place in the future to work with Montgomery College and MCPS to recruit students who this might be a viable career path?
Yes, in fact, we've been talking to Montgomery College in response to some scholarship programs and really kind of some God's underwear. We've been having these discussions with Mr. Jawando's his legislation. We've also been we've really been having this conversation with MCPS and having a law enforcement track for their students. I believe there was some discussion about a program at one of the high schools that we were really focusing on about law enforcement, and that discussion is not off the table. We're still trying to push that agenda. So Dr. McKnight and I have had those sort of baseline discussions in the midst of everything else going on, but we think that this is a wave that we can move towards the future to get more students involved and engaged, local students to be interested in our department and our profession.
Appreciate it. I just want to offer my strong encouragement for that. I think there's real opportunity there, and think that it builds on the Cadet Program and some of the other efforts that you're successfully undertaking to build this community policing and recruitment pipeline in law enforcement. So thank you very much, and I'll yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Chief Jones. Thank you, Ms. Farag. Thank you to the Public Safety Committee for a phenomenal job in terms of really laying out some important facts. I just want to start at the beginning and just take a step back, because I think that over the course of these past couple of years, folks have especially equated people of color to a very binary sort of discussion, more or less police. And that's it. When in fact, the reality is that, and I don't proclaim to speak for all Black Americans, nor all the Black people in Montgomery County, but I will say that in my conversations, people expect to see, just as they do in any other department, something that works for them to help their lives be better. That means responding in cases of need, whether it's a car accident or a break-in or a person who's been assaulted, cases of domestic violence, whatever the situation may be. And they understand that some of these situations that maybe deal with a mental health crisis or others can be solved by having a non-uniformed police officer come in. The reality is that some of those can't. A person who's being abused by another with a weapon is something that certainly I would not want to put a person who's ill-equipped in harm's way to respond to. And so unfortunately, until we fix those societal ills that we continue to have, we will continue to need uniformed armed police officers in our community to keep our community safe and to respond to the needs of our community. There is no difference as to whether you're Black, white, Asian, Latinx as to those needs. They strike across all facets. There are folks who suffer from domestic violence incidents that are of all races, creeds, cultures, gender identities, whatever the case may be. And so the reality is that why do we then say that somehow any one of those sectors are less deserving of having those protections? It is not as binary as the argument places itself in many of our mainstream media outlets. And so from that standpoint, I just want to make sure that as we are moving forward with this budget, that folks understand why it is that we are looking at doing what we are doing and investing in our police force. I came from the private sector. I used to work for Marriott Corporation. And one of the things Mr. Marriott used to say, now our largest hotelier in the world, said is, take care of the employees will take care of the guests, and the guests will keep coming back. When we invest in our police officers, just like we invest in our bus drivers, just like we invest in our teachers, just like we invest in every other facet of government, we assume that then we will have better results, better service for our community, and better outcomes as a result. And so I see this in our investment in our police department in doing just that. I also see and could not wholeheartedly more agree with Council Vice President Glass when it comes to supporting our cadet program. It is imperative that we continue to utilize every way imaginable to continue to diversify our workforce, something in which we have done in so many other sectors in our government operations as well, right? So I think that, and I do agree, that while it does fall under the threshold, understanding that we do have huge constraints on our budget, I'm not asking for you right now, Council Vice President Glass, but I would encourage you to think about possibly breaking this up into a couple tranches at least because of so much constraint that's on our reconciliation list. And I don't want to see these opportunities lost to be able to grow this valuable program. But that being said, I just wanted to ask you, Chief, because, look, I've known you for a long time. Since a young man growing up here in this county, and full disclosure, Chief Jones and I go to the same church. One of the concerns that I have is that the true voice of the community, the voice that you hear from, that your officers hear from, is not always heard in terms of what people are asking for. When you have a crime that's committed in Germantown Park Estates, formerly known as Cinnamon Woods, what is it that you hear from your officers? When you have a person that's shot in downtown Silver Spring, what is it that you hear from the constituents that are standing out wondering what has happened? I'm just curious as to what it is that the people are saying when these kinds of egregious incidents are happening in our community.
Well, I think, thank you, Councilmember Rice. I think one of the things that they most importantly are asking us is, what are we doing in order to resolve these crimes, and, and what are the strategies in order to keep them safe? Because they want to be safe. And that, when I hear from my officers that are talking to people in places such as in Germantown Park, that they, because of drive-by shootings and incidents that have occurred there throughout the last year or so, that they are fearful for their children to come out and play. And so when the officers are there as a presence, in order to deter any types of crimes from further happening, that the community is very appreciative of the officers and being in that place to provide that safety net at that very moment. And so we want to be able to continue to provide that to the best of our abilities, and understand that we'd rather be on the front side of prevention, which I think is most important in all aspects of policing and public safety, than be responding and be reactive to what's occurring in our communities and allowing these feelings of fear to repeat themselves. Again, because people, want to come to areas all throughout Montgomery County, because Montgomery County has always been that type of area that people from all over the Washington metropolitan region will come and visit because of its safe place. But if they begin to hear more about these negative type of incidents, whether they're shootings or any other violent crimes such as carjackings, it raises a flag. And we've heard that when people may mention certain places such as Silver Spring or Germantown as an example.
Thank you for that, Chief. You touched on 2 points that I think are incredibly important. I just want to highlight them because I think that they're a part of this budget in terms of where our initiatives are when it comes to responding to those kinds of needs. As Ms. Farag said, we have 24 positions, all of 3 of which are civilian. So working to make sure that the operational side of the police force continues to happen, while there are people who are asking in communities of color for additional officers on the street. I know I've heard it. I know you've heard it. We've been at forums together where we've heard it. So I think that, and our approach when it came to mental health and making sure that we had mental health triage teams that are able to respond, have also been embraced by the community in terms of what it is that we're doing. I'd like to ask you, though, because we continue to see challenges in our community that are beyond sometimes what our police can do, what do you say to the person who says that, well, we should take that money that we're investing in police and invest it heavily in these other things because our police aren't able to always deter those crimes and those things from happening? What would you say to that?
Well, again, I understand that there are other options, right, that can possibly deter some crimes with people in the social work world or beyond. But I also understand that, and I think it must be understood that, there are things that happen in our communities that many people in those environments don't necessarily seek out those particular services. Right. And these individuals have made up in their minds that they are sort of on another side of the law, that creates the havoc, creates the fear that we are talking about. And therefore, I think it's vitally important, as myself as the chief of police, and our senior executive team, to be able to manage and monitor, as we do really on a daily basis, our personnel, to be able to put them in the best position possible to try to prevent these things from happening. And look, again, policing on it by itself will not solve these problems, right? But I believe that there is a collective effort that we have to do this together. It can't be one side or the other. It has to be the collective partnerships that are working towards a common goal. And I think when we all put our heads together and brainstorm and really see how some can maybe impact a particular community more than another, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be the police department, but it may need to be the police department. And I think, again, we need to be fair in that assessment in order to come up with best strategies in order to do that.
Chief, I just want to close by thanking you, and I apologize, Council President, but this is really important to me. What you just said at the end encapsulates exactly what I think the message needs to be. That, again, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to especially serving our communities of color. There are folks that are hurting, that expect to see folks that are there, that are looking out for them because they're trying to just protect their own livelihoods. And there are folks out there that are genuinely fearful, thinking that if they do something wrong, if they act the wrong way, if they do the wrong thing, it could end up being them losing their lives at the hands of an officer. All of those things are there. And it's a complex solution in terms of how we get to and address those kinds of issues to ensure that people feel safe and secure in their neighborhoods. And it is going to take all of us. It's going to take us building on education. It's going to take us building on health and human services. It's going to take us making sure that we have the mental health support that's there. And it is also, for the time being, going to be making sure that we have a police force that can respond and hopefully in some cases help to prevent incidents from happening, right? We don't need to go ad nauseum into the hundreds, thousands of times that police have been in a situation where they've actually staved off something from happening. They're not always reported. They're not always seen, but we know that they happen, and we have tons of anecdotal information and evidence to support it. The reality is this, is that by us continuing to invest in our police now, because we know that we still have to have them, I think we'll have better outcomes in our community, along with the other investments that we have. If we were only siloed, then I would have concerns about where we are. But that is not the case. We have heavily invested on all of those other things that I've talked about that I think go hand in hand with us also making sure that we have that commensurate investment when it comes to our police. And so I just want to say thank you for your leadership. I remember when you first got nominated for the position, I said, and I know I was quoted.
I'm going to break in really, and I apologize to do this. I want to let the public know in 1 minute, the feed on the television is going to switch over to the county executive press conference. So for those watching on TV, you can continue to watch on Facebook, and we will continue going, but I just wanted to make that announcement. I so apologize.
No, I apologize, and I'm going to be done. I just want to say that I said you were the right person for the job. And I said that because I knew that you were a person who not only believed in what we need to do for our communities, especially those that are socioeconomically impacted and communities of color, but also believed in safety and security, and also understanding that we aspire for a better world to where we won't have to have policing as a part of what it is that we do. And I thank you for that. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I apologize for that, Councilmember Rice. Had to get it in before the public so they knew what was going on. Thank you all very much. We have a committee recommendation before us. All those in favor of the committee recommendation, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous among all those present. Thank you so much, Chief. Thank you. All right, that moves us on to our last item before adjournment today, which is the Office of Human Rights. Mr. Stowe, if you want to come forward, thank you. You win a prize for staying till the end. I read that patience is rooted in the Latin word to suffer. So I appreciate you being patient.
Speak after you're done.
Yeah. So thanks. I will. You get a twofer on this because this obviously comes before the HHS committee. I want to thank Mr. Mia for putting together a great packet and walking us through it. And fortunately, thanks to actions of previous years in this council, we have been able to add to the Office of Human Rights. And while they are still not yet in terms of where they were at the staffing levels before the recession almost 12 years ago, they are inching closer to having some additional support staff. But we just want to acknowledge, Mr. Stowe, as we have in the past, and we will every time you come before this body, our deep respect for your work, for you personally, for you professionally, for the board, for the staff. This council has also been very aggressive in advancing policies and legislation that your office is responsible for carrying out and make sure that we see to fruition. And we know that there continues to be a tremendous amount of need across our community, and we so appreciate you being on the front lines addressing so much of it. So Councilmember Reamer had requested to say a couple of words. Do you want to do that after the packet or now?
Now, I guess it's fine. It's
sure
much of the packet, but Director Stowe, thank you for being here. Really appreciate your work. It's so important. You provide a real need to our community with leadership, and so many look to you, and we're grateful for that. I wanted to just express appreciation for the committee's recommendation for additional funding for the Commission on Remembrance and Reconciliation, and I know that the office will be able to support the commission and using that to great effect. They're going to deepen their partnership with the Montgomery, Alabama-based Equal Justice Institute and really begin to get some forward momentum on many of the critical measures of that program. And there's a separate fund that I believe GO Committee has recommended in the Office of the County Executive for planning money for a memorial for the victims of lynching in Montgomery County. And so these two will be working in tandem, and again, really grateful for the recommendation to add a modest amount of funding for the commission to expand and deepen its work. And thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you. Mr. Mee, I'll turn it over to you to just quickly walk us through the packet, and then I'll turn it to Mr. Stowe to make some comments.
Sure. Thank you. Really straightforward. There are two items that the county executive provided amendments for that did not undergo committee review, so we just wanted to bring that to your attention today. First, the executive is recommending $56,000 of one-time funding for the commission. This was actually reviewed by the committee, but the county executive is now recognizing that recommendation from the committee through his amendments. And the second item is $100,000 for annual Juneteenth celebration events. This is ongoing funding, so it'll provide planning and outreach activities for Juneteenth, to recognize Juneteenth. And council staff has no issues with either amendment. So.
Great. Mr. Stowe, did you want to make a few words?
Okay, I've not been in a while. I was trying to figure out what button I was supposed to push here. First of all, good afternoon to all of you, and thank you, Council President Albanese and Vice President Glass, and all members of Council. We are very, very appreciative of the support for these particular two items. The one involving our Remembrance and Reconciliation Commission. I was just in Montgomery and I had a chance to see the work that's been done there by Brian Stevenson and the efforts underway of the Equal Justice Initiative. And so we're very pleased that we are part of this process, that we too can take our place in not so positive kind of way in terms of what we're talking about. But nonetheless, we're going to look at our history honestly and frankly and move quickly toward the issue of reconciliation. But we've got to start with the truth first. And that's the part that we want to affirm through these resources you've been able to give us to better equip the folks who are part of our commission to understand the issues and really do some deep diving into why and how we got to be where we are here in Montgomery County. And so I thank you very much for those things. And as we go forward, we'll be getting a report from what they're doing and the progress they are making as a commission. So I want to thank you for that. The next item, of course, is our Juneteenth piece. We did have my colleague, Lynn Arndt, who was here with Black Rock Center for the Arts, who is our partner in this event. And I certainly would not want to not say that. She came all the way from Germantown to be here this morning. So I want to thank her for her support and that of her team at Black Rock. We want to do as good and as an appropriate celebration for this event. As you know, thank you for making it an official holiday here in Montgomery County. We're excited about that. And so we want to do our due diligence in terms of planning, in terms of preparation. So this will be a really, really important, but also an event that's up to our standards here in Montgomery County. And so that's why we've come before you asking for these resources. The other community is doing so well, and their celebration is Annapolis, and while it is the capital, and in terms of the government of the state of Maryland, it's not Montgomery County. And we want to be first. And so, again, we offer that in terms of this request today.
Thank you, Director Stowe. So I think I'm going to go out on a limb and assume there's concurrence among colleagues for it to be added for discussion. Mr. Mia, I want to make sure can you articulate the motion that we would need?
The motion would be to add $56,000 of one-time funding to the reconciliation list for the Remembrance Commission and $100,000 of ongoing funding for the Juneteenth celebration events.
Moved by Councilmember Rice, seconded by Councilmember Reamer. No other discussion from colleagues. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous among all those present. Great. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you
Stowe.
for your support, folks. Really appreciate you.
And with that, colleagues, we are adjourned.